celebrate the profound historical, cultural, and intellectual exchanges that have shaped the destinies of ancient civilizations. May I now take the privilege of inviting to the dais our Venerable Chairperson, Professor Prasad Nanda, Director of Odisha Research Center, Bhubaneswar. Joining him, I warmly invite our eminent speakers, Dr. Ratnasiri Ratnanayaka, Senior Lecturer, University of Kelaniya, Sri Lanka, Dr. Kaushik Gangopadhyaya, Assistant Professor, Department of Archaeology, Calcutta University, Nia Deliana, Assistant Professor, Universitas Islam International, Indonesia, Dr. Janardhan Podel, Language Scholar, National University, Nepal. And to steer the discourse of intellectual finesse, may I now invite our distinguished moderator, Dr. Ujjwala Khoth Palsule, Conservation Architect and Founder, Director, Samarchana, Pune. Let us now embark upon this journey through time, across lands and legacies, as we explore the cultural confluence between Kalinga and Southeast Asia.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to the first session titled Historiography of Cultural Interaction between Kalinga and Southeast Asia. It is a celebration of shared memories, sacred geographies, and historical currents that flowed through Bay of Bengal, connecting Indian subcontinent with the vibrant island and mainland cultures of Southeast Asia. From ancient traders to living festivals like Bali Yatra, these links remind us that history isn't just our past, it breathes through our traditions even today. This session is thoughtfully designed to bring together policymakers, historians, and scholars to reflect on the cultural confluence shaped by centuries of maritime engagement. At the heart of today's conversation lies Kalinga, a region that was once thriving maritime hub, deeply engaged with the countries like Cambodia, Indonesia, Malaysia, Myanmar, Thailand, and Vietnam. Through the Sadhavas, the seafaring merchants, monks, and artisans traveled. They took Kalinga's goods along with ideas, philosophies, languages, architecture, and artistic expressions. We gather today to critically examine the historiographical approaches that have attempted to capture this interaction, ranging from various ideas of mutuality, hybridity, and cultural negotiation. I would humbly like to extend my gratitude to the chairperson of this session, highly respected Professor Chandi Prasad Nanda, Director of Odisha Research Center in Bhubaneswar. Professor Nanda is a respected voice in Odisha's cultural studies, has agreed graciously to chair this session. His research spans maritime history, folk traditions, and the intellectual network of pre-modern Odisha. His recent work on reinterpreting Odisha's inscriptions and trade routes has significantly influenced regional historiography. We have four esteemed scholars with us for this panel discussion. Dr. Ratnasiri Ratnayaka from Sri Lanka, Dr. Kaushik Gangopadhyay from Calcutta, India, Ms. Nia Deliana from Indonesia, Professor Janardhan Podel from Nepal to enlighten us on this topic. They will guide us on the new insights, evidences, and perspectives on age-old cultural exchange across the Bay of Bengal. In this session, we'll have a discourse of each speaker for about 10 to 15 minutes. It will offer us a unique overview to explore civilizational engagement between Kalinga and Southeast Asia. Then we'll have a short question and answer session, followed by concluding remarks of our esteemed chairperson. Now with this, I would like to invite our first speaker, Dr. Ratnasiri Ratnayake, Senior Lecturer at Postgraduate Institute of Pali and Buddhist Studies, University of Kelaniya, Sri Lanka. He specializes in Buddhist textual traditions and early cultural exchanges across Indian Ocean. His insight into shared Buddhist heritage between Sri Lanka, Kalinga, Southeast Asia will enrich our understanding. Sir, floor is all yours.
Thank you very much. So, Professor Chia and all the eminent scholars and all the scholars in the audience, I'm very happy to be here, especially at the invitation of Professor Upik Pandi and Professor Mishra. At the inception, I would like to say that I'm not a historian or an archaeologist, but I have a keen interest in studying Odisha, and this is my fifth conference in Odisha, and in India more than 25. Okay. Oh, excuse me, it's not my one. Okay, I'm going to use some slides. So let me talk about the civilizational exchange between Kalinga and ancient Sri Lanka, then Ceylon. Okay, yeah. So, does it work? Why? Yeah. Here, here. Sorry? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, sorry for the technical issue. Yeah. Yes, my topic is civilizational exchanges between Kalinga and ancient Sri Lanka. Yes. So, Toshali and Kalinga Nagara, the earliest recognized center for Kalinga was at Toshali and Kalinga Nagara, that is Suspalgra, near Bhubaneswar. So, Toshali was the capital of Ashokan in the 3rd century BC, and Kalinga Nagara was the capital of Karwala, the ruler of Kalinga. So, Karwala, yes, the Roman historian Pliny the Elder refers to this, the central Odisha near under Karwala's successors. So, Ceylon and Kalinga had strong exchanges. These exchanges are matrimonial, religious, cultural, and political. They flourished about 1700 BCE to 500 CE. Okay, the Abhayagiri monastery, which is famous in Sri Lanka, had deep connections with Kalinga. The Mahavansa, the great chronicle of Ceylon, and Deepavansa, the chronicle of the island, described the first king. Vijayan arrivals. As you know, Indian Prince Vijaya came with 700 followers, entourage, from Singhapura, which is in Kalinga, in the 5th century BC. He settled in Sri Lanka and found that the Sinhalese race, although it's controversial, that is the general acceptance. Then Manimekala mentions Singapore as the capital of Kalinga. So Mahavansa, the great chronicle of Ceylon, says Vijaya defeated the Yaksha tribe, one of the tribes which were existing among the four. So Yakshas were one of the natives that existed on the island, Yaksha, Naga, Deva and Rakshan. So Dr. Kandarpa Patel states that Odisha had the same four clans, indigenous clans. Prince Vijay was banished from India by his father, and he embarked from Singapore, which is in Kalinga. So he arrived in Sri Lanka, took control, and became king of Tambapanni or Tambrapanni. His followers established their rulership in villages, and they established colonies. So Vijayan's succession. A minister of Vijaya named Anuradha founded a village called Kolon, the ancient name, and the village name was after him as Anuradhagama village. Later it became Anuradhapura, city of Anuradhapura, and that is the first kingdom of Ceylon. So he sent a letter to Singapore. So when Vijaya married a native king, and he had two children, and he wanted a royal heir blood to become the king of Ceylon. So he sent a letter to Singapore, Kalinga, inviting brother Sumitra to come there. But at the time, Sumitra was very old. So he sent his youngest son, Panduasa Deva, to rule Sri Lanka. So after death of Vijaya, and his successors actually had the ties, and the ties with Odisha continued. So cultural, matrimonial, economic, political interactions remain strong. So therefore the purpose of this paper is to highlight, expose at some level the historic relations, exchanges between then Ceylon and Odisha. Okay, let's talk about matrimonial relationships. So I collected these evidences from literary sources and archaeological sources as far as I could. So Biswajit Pradhan or Pradhan states that the Sinhalese and Kalinga royal families had a long history of long matrimonial relationship with Sri Lanka. So in the 10th century CE, King Mahinda IV of Sri Lanka married a Kalingan princess and took her as his chief consort. King Vijayabahu I, founder of the Polonnaruwa, the second kingdom of Sri Lanka, also married a Kalingan princess named Tilokasundari. King Nissankamalla, originally from Kalinga, who was a pure Kalingan lineage, became ruler of Sri Lanka, and he made Kalingan lineage and named and also married a princess queen named Subhadra Devi and made her his chief consort. So yes, so patronizing Buddhism, Nissankamalla is remembered as one of the greatest kings of Sri Lanka and promoter of peace. So he was actually chief patronizer of Buddhism. So he restored ancient city of Anuradhapura, Sri Lanka's first kingdom before Pandukabhe. So he installed 78 gold glided Buddha statues at Dambulla cave monastery, which is known as Rangiri Dambulu Vihara. Rangiri like Lalitagiri. Okay. So he remained. So this, he remained the site of. So he renamed this site Rangiri Dambulu Vihara. Now it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So Galpotha inscription mentions that Nissankamalla is Malla's Kalingan origin. Some scholars refer to this rule as the Kalinga era in Sri Lanka. Now, strong friendships and religious and cultural relationship. So, Dahata Vansa, that is the great chronicle of the Buddha's tooth relics, shows very clearly that the strong ties between King Guha Siva of Kalinga and King Mahadisena in Sri Lanka. As you know, facing invasions, King Guha Siva secretly sent his daughter, Princess Hemamala, and son-in-law, Hemamala's husband, Dantakumar, to Sri Lanka. So Hemamala was hiding the tooth relics in a hair and brought to Sri Lanka. It is one of the most respected sacred things in Sri Lanka, and is after 16 years, it was exhibited in Sri Lanka. And there was a large crowd of devotees. So in the following centuries, Buddhist viharas, stupas, chaityas were constructed. So in the 4th and 5th centuries, there were major architectural and literary developments. So that's it. Then spread of religion and culture. Kalinga played a key role in patronizing, supporting, fostering Buddhism in Sri Lanka by gifting the sacred tooth relic. That's the most important thing. So Mahavansa also notes that Vijaya's entourage, 700 followers, included potters of Kalinga, potters from Kalinga, pottery industry, which Sri Lanka had great influence. So in 2nd century BC, Venerable nun, let's say 3rd century BC, nun Sangamitta, the sister of Arahant Mahinda Thero, and the daughter of great Ashoka, brought the Bodhi tree, Bodhi sapling from Bodh Gaya to Sri Lanka, the right sapling of the Bodhi tree, where Buddha got the enlightenment. And she was accompanied by artisans from 18 crafts from Kalinga. So that had a great, the beginning of a great cultural revolution in Sri Lanka. 18 types of craftsmen, artisans. So like crafts like pottery, lacquer work, drum making, wood carving, jewelry making, and handlooms were among them. So the Kandyan dance in Sri Lanka and Kannadi Nacha of Odisha both narrate Ramayana, the great Hindu epic. So invasion of Kalinga, although we had a lot of good influences, so according to military history of Odisha and by Ramesh Prasad Mahapota, and even according to Mahavansa, the great chronicle of Ceylon, in short, Kalinga Maga, general from Kalinga, came to Polonnaru and destroyed Polonnaru entirely, devastating all the Buddhist stupas, and he had a most disastrous kind of war there. Okay, then expansion of Kalinga military power. That's Ashoka, I think I should skip that. Yes, maritime interactions. This is very important. So maritime interactions of ancient Odisha. So Kalinga expanded its maritime trade relations, cultural relations, mainly after 3rd century BC. The history of Kalinga generally begins from this period in Sri Lanka. So by the time of Ashoka, Kalinga had already established maritime position and navy to resist Magadhan forces. So under King Karvela, the Odishan ruler, Kalinga became a major power spot in eastern India around the 1st century BC. The Buddhist Jataka's tales, the previous tales of the Buddha, and Vritakatha and Kautilyan Arthashastra. Kautilya's Arthashastra mentions Kalinga's ancient maritime relations. So diverse interactions with Ceylon and foreign lands. Sri Lanka preferred Kalinga for both maritime trade and marital relationships. Kalinga maintained many prosperous seaports for trade and commerce. These ports are vital, very important centers for commercial, cultural and political life. So these ports served not only as export hubs, but also mediums of spreading culture and civilization. The people of Kalinga were driven by a spirit of adventure and colonization. They aimed to spread their religion and culture while establishing colonies and kingdoms, especially through commercial and political ties. So population pressure in parts of India led to migration to foreign lands. One is Kalinga. As a result, Indian culture led to migrate into Sri Lanka. So, yes. So these Jatakas, Sanka Jataka, Samudra Jataka, Mahajanaka Jataka, these Jatakas very clearly describe the traders traveling from Kalinga to Sri Lanka. So royal lineage between ancient Odisha and ancient Sri Lanka, as it was mentioned, Mahavansa records Sinhalese race, although it's controversial, but general acceptance that Sinhalese race started from Vijaya, the first king of Ceylon. Actually, Mahavansa starts from the arrival of Vijaya, advent of Vijaya, from eastern India. So, okay. So then advent of Sinhalese. After a long voyage, as it was said, so Vijay landed near Putlam and he happened to identify the island as Tamba Panni or Tambra Panni. Okay, so there's a story regarding that. And the Vijayan dynasty, Panduvasadeva and 30 followers landed at Gokanna, the present day Trincomalee, and enthroned at Upatissa Gama. Upatissa was one of the generals. Gama is village. Okay, so Chulavansa mentions that Singapura are legendary for Ceylon. Okay, so okay. Now the pilgrims and traders. So pilgrims from Ceylon frequently travel through Kalinga's ports to visit holy sites in India. So this is about the pilgrims. The main sea route for pilgrims and traders ran from Tambrapanni, or that's Ceylon, linking to Pataliputra, India. Okay, so Chinese pilgrims fly and travel by boat from Pataliputra to Ceylon using Kalinga's maritime routes. So in conclusion, yes. So I like to say that an ethnological study of the Sinhalese race reveals that a strong South Indian influence actually came into being on Sri Lanka with culture, especially Odishan culture. So rituals, beliefs, practices in Sri Lankan villages closely resemble practices and cultural resemblance in Odisha. So to strengthen ties between modern Odisha and Sri Lanka, it is suggested to revive, enhance, re-establish through cultural, religious, educational, tourism, trade, and academic exchange, art and architecture and history. So it's hoped that Odisha and Sri Lanka will rekindle their historic relationship, further strengthening India-Sri Lanka ties. Even today, so we have many names in Sri Lanka. Palit, we say Palita. Kumar, but here in Sri Lanka we say Kumar with addition of and Upendra, that's same. So Ramanayak, we have a lot of Ramanayaka. And you know, I have one friend here called Sunil Patnayak, and my name is Ratnayak. So we have actually here Ratnagiri, Lalitagiri, and in Sri Lanka we have Milagiri, Siyagiri, Singhgiri, Rangiri. So if you just put name Ratnagiri and remove Giri and put Siri, that's my name, Ratnasiri. So that's how even the cultural ties, even modern Sri Lanka, we have lots of ties. So I wish all the authorities may have concern on reviving, especially the cultural ties, economic ties, religious ties through tourism. You know, in Sri Lanka, most of the people wishing to go on pilgrimage to Buddhist sites go to Buddha Gaya and Sanchi, India. So they have in their minds only Sanchi, Buddha Gaya, like that. So I hope that they will also add Kalinga, in the pilgrimage. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your in-depth transmission of ideas across different regions of Sri Lanka. Now may I request Ms. Nia Deliana, Assistant Professor at the Universitas Islam International Indonesia. Her work focuses on cultural diplomacy and Southeast Asian historical identities, making her voice essential in this dialogue. I welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you to the moderator. So please allow me to continue speaking with you from these chairs, not on the podium, because, and I will not share any kind of PowerPoint too, just, you know, we can talk directly like this and let's see what you think about what I'm about to say. Okay, when we talk about the Kalinga in Southeast Asia, I think most of the history that we've known so far has been pretty much, you know, staying in the ancient era, right? The era before Jesus Christ, and the era after the Kalinga kingdom collapsed in 261 before Jesus Christ, right? All the, you know, the spread of the refugees, the spread of the culture and influences indirectly after the Kalinga kingdom collapsed. What I'm about to say is that I would like to give you a kind of, probably you're going to take it as a new knowledge, because I'm going to tell you about how Kalinga, you know, existed, preserved from 13th century onwards, not by the Kalingas, whatever in South Asia or in India, but in Southeast Asia. I'm about to tell you how the Indo-Malay people play a role in preserving the Kaling heritage, the Kaling legacy through their own way, okay? So if you come from Malaysia and Singapore, I know previously that we have Dr. Siva, you know, talking about the Indian in Malaysia and Singapore, and something related to race. Probably now, if you hear about the word Kaling and talk with the Malaysian Indian or Singaporean Indian, they would get angry to you. You know, why are you calling us, you know, this word? This is racial slur. This is derogatory. Don't use it. But you know what happened? Yeah, in the last several years, you know, the youth of the Indians, the Hindus, the youth of Malaysian Hindus and Muslims start to come up and reclaim that the legacy of this Kalinga is basically ours. Let me tell you the story. So this topic is my dissertation, okay? I do a PhD focusing only tracing the word Kaling from 13th century to the 20th century. And I found through numerous classical texts written in Javanese, written in Malay, Arabic script, and also English, these words, okay? So there is obviously transformation of, if you would call it, you know, identities of the Kalingas, right? We know this one Kalingas, but when you come to the Southeast Asia, maybe you're gonna find a mountain named after Kaling, for instance, Tanjung Kaling. A continent, yeah, even this Indian continent, in the classical text, you know, they call it Benua Kaling, meaning the continent of the Kalings, the Kalingas, right? So I have come across several classical texts mentioning this word, and it just become mesmerizing because the Kaling identity is so much different than what the current people understand, okay? And the text on and on in Arabic script, you know, mentioning their roles, let's say the Kaling sailors, the Kalings, you know, kings, yeah. The roles that described in this classical text is so much grander than what has been dichotomized, corrupted in the English newspapers that we read, produced in the 19th century, for instance, right? Especially from the colonial newspapers. So there is something special about this, yeah. This is totally, you know, thanking to the Indo-Malay archipelago, the population, the people who write those letters in Arabic, Malay Arabic scripts, and mentioning Kaling traders, on and on. Wealthy, rich traders, for instance, like the Marakayars, yeah, the Periatambi, all those kind of names that they call as Kaling. Probably now you're not gonna understand that these names are not Odisha's people. This name does not portray any kind of Bubashneshwarians people. These are from South India, these are Tamils. But that's how the Malays, the Muslims in the Southeast Asia remembers the flow of the people from these Kalinga areas, okay? That's how they remember. Because at that time there was no map, right? There was no topographic technology where you can pinpoint, oh, this guy come from that area. At that time, the map that used at that time totally is based on the sailors' information, right? Just a single name, a continent, right? When the Malays say, hey, where you come from? I come from Benua Kaling, you know, meaning that I come from the Kalinga's continent. So that's how it preserved, yeah, the identity of the Kalingas that now we talk about this so much, yeah? And there is something very special about this, like, I kind of look at how the trade, you know, the trade between Indians and Indonesians and the Malays before colonialism has continued for so long without being disrupted by a huge war, right? Not like the war that happened between the Portuguese, for instance, with the Malay sovereignties, or the Dutch, or the British. Not even like the Cholas Empire War against the Sriwijaya, okay? Between 13th century onward, you kind of see there is no significant wars happen. It was peaceful. The trade that continued between these two regions was pretty much, you know, entangled between each other. In international relations, we call this, there is that sort of, you know, economic interdependency between the Kaling traders and the Malay Muslim sovereignties, yeah, in Southeast Asia. The other thing is that what I think, you know, allowing this kind of continuity to take place for centuries peacefully is that because I think the global system, the global order at that time, especially the Indian Ocean global order, was non-homogenic, it was open, it was pluralistic, and also, you know, and it was in itself, you know, kind of decentered. It was multicentric, but yet so much unipolarity contained inside it. Meaning, with this kind of global order, yeah, that happening at that time, all these foreigners, all these foreign merchants that come to the sovereignty in Southeast Asia, they could take action and role as the, you know, as the Sultanate's financial advisors, as the Sultanate's diplomats, as the Sultanate's treaty drafters, you know, even the Nakudas, if you know the name of the Nakudas, this is a ship captain. All that kind of positions could occur in those years, even though they are foreigners, okay? They are foreigners. They are not. There is nothing documenting, just like today. You know, oh, you are not born in this in Southeast Asian cities. Why you have this sort of position? What kind of authority, you know, that you exercise when you are not a citizen of this state, for instance, right? But in those days, there's no such things. It's totally about social interdependence. If that foreigners contributed so much to the economy in Southeast Asia, in Indonesia, Singapore, Malaysia, if they contributed so much, just like Marakayar traders, just like Periatambi, for instance, that I mentioned previously, that is super wealthy merchant. Without him, the trade won't happen, won't circulate it in this area. Then that's how, you know, they could be taken as, you know, as the allies of the Sultanate, yeah? So it blurred all the boundaries of the nation states that we now learn, you know, like this. So I mentioned previously, right, I can give you a lot of names, you know, hundreds, not hundreds, probably, depends on the area, but so far the research that I have done has, you know, concentrated only in Sumatra. And I know there are significant numbers of names that were known as the Kalings. And I'm sorry to say, maybe this is kind of a little bit uncomfortable for you, that all those Kalings that known to the Malays, Muslim in Southeast Asia, were mostly Muslims. Either they convert, either they burned. Because let's say in 16th century onward, the flow of the traders that come from India coming from the Coromandel coast, from Tamil Nadu, and the Malabar, you know, the Malabar regions. So this is just understandable, right? Okay, of course they are known as mostly Muslims because they come from that area. But it doesn't mean there's no any Hindus at all, right? There were several rich Hindu merchants that traded in those years. I could give you a name, for instance, Purvan. Yeah, Purvan is working with the British merchants called Francis Light, and he was known as a Kaling. He was a good negotiator, he was a good lobbyist. There was sometime, you know, a crisis occurred between the Sultanate and the traders flying under the British vessels at that time. And this man is the one who was able to negotiate all the terms between the two sides. So you see the diplomatic stuff that happening over here. So by giving you all this kind of, you know, brief information, maybe I can conclude, you know, we can exchange something more later on by question and answer. I would like to conclude that, you know, the global order of the Indian Ocean at that time playing so much role in prolonging peaceful trade, peaceful relations. It was not authoritarian global order. It was not realist type of global order. It was kind of a mixture between liberal order and, in some kind of cases, realist type of approach. So yeah, that is that kind of little bit similarities that we can give, right? But the things that I would like to say is that when we talk about Kalinga civilization, Kalinga identities, cannot belong to the Indians people alone. It cannot belong to the Odisha or Bhubaneswar people alone, but it belongs to a wider, universal, global people such as those in Southeast Asia. And I believe if we do something more research, just relying on the local classical text, then we're going to be able to find, you know, some more connection in that term. So Kalinga civilization is global civilization. Yeah, it is not Indians alone. I repeat again, but it belongs to a wider world where universalism, you know, non-hegemonic unipolarity under mutual respect and economic interdependency, you know, occurs. So yeah, so that's all I think from me. Thank you so much. Looking forward for your questions and answer. Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Nia, for a very fresh and valuable dimension for our session. Now, may I request Dr. Janardhan Padyol from Nepal. He is a revered language scholar from National University of Nepal. He offers a unique philosophical approach to Kalinga's cultural dissemination, particularly through Sanskrit and Pali text. We look forward to your reflections, sir.
respected chairperson sir of this program, mostly respected Upendra Padi sir, Professor P.P. Mishra sir, and all other organizing committee of this program. I am very grateful to all of you for inviting me for this program. This is my second time here. In this first edition also, I was here to speak few words, and here also I have got some opportunity. Now, I want to say things like that, Indianization. So, what do we mean by Indianization? How do countries develop? How do they cooperate? So, mostly relating to Nepal, India, Southeast Asia, Kalinga, etc. I want to mention such types of points here in my few words. If it would be longer time, I would say many things to give many ideas for research students also, but here is time very short, so I say something very short also. And so, first of all, as we see relationship between Nepal and India, now these are the only two countries in the world where there is no visa and passport to cross from one place to another place. And so that culture is also mutual, understanding also is mutual, and so that's relation, education, etc. Everything is mutual here. Students from Nepal can come to India to study freely. Indian students also go to Nepal freely to contact with us. I have guided 18 students master level thesis from IGNU, Delhi, because there is no any kind of restriction to us. So we are very helpful between us. So this is our main motto say. So today, previously, countries were suppose self-oriented. So unipolar situation was there, but now there is multipolar situation. So a country has got a relation with other country also. And so, so relationship of a country is with another country also, and so countries do their development only for the purpose of assistance for development. Now that is the main thing for like that. So this is Indo-Nepal connectivity, mostly a kind of unique sense in this world, because it is since time immemorial also. And so from 1950s and 51, Nepal and India have been some of the great cooperative countries to each other, and so that cannot be neglected. So historical context, as we have to go, since 1950, 1951, there was a kind of treaty between Nepal and India, and that was related to peace and friendship. So these two countries are related to protect both countries together in a mutual front. And so the aim of such type of situation is that, so there are such type of maintaining political stability, now some of the building economic power and creating support, some of the just based in societies and influencing the influential life, intellectual life of people in Nepal and India. Now both sides were very friendly. All right. My habit is speaking very slowly like that. So if we have to talk about assistance between Nepal and India, so there is infrastructure support also. Just India has built so many school buildings also, provided many school buses also, ambulances also, and helped to build many hospitals also, and with other equipment related to hospital also. So technological advancement between Nepal and India, the support is a kind of great example. And so not only that much, suppose in building road also, in building railway line also, India has held, supported Nepal in many activities. And so there are related joint checkposts also between Nepal and India, and so that people in the border side have been checked, so that persons who are at least suppose not related to one another, they cannot enter in both countries from that border side. And so other different kinds of activities are like that. So many just close friendship, open border, and so just many different kinds of support centers, employment facilities, etc. Now these are all related to Nepal and India. So Nepalese people also can come here and get their employment easily, and Indian people also go to Nepal and get their employment easily. Suppose we adjust Indian intellectuals or suppose technical persons also there easily, and Nepalese people also are working in India, in many parts of India. And so they have built their house also, they have sent their children for the purpose of study also. And so in many different kinds of health sectors also, these two countries have their support to each other. And so not only that much, so suppose other different kinds of delivery system, different kinds of relief delivery system. Once there was a great earthquake in Nepal, and so India at that time much more to support people from Tarai region to hilly region also. And so at that time, people from India, or suppose those support army people from India, they held Nepal very properly. So it was very difficult task also. Now they always reach there in such type of situation. Now let's go to, this is a kind of just release development, economic partnership, and suppose stability, etc. Then if we talk about educational support, there is ICCR supported many Nepalese students to study in India. At least mostly more than 1,000 students get scholarship from school level to up to PhD level also. And so there is also great help. That scholarship category also has been separated very properly. And so many Nepalese students are continuing their study in such type of situation here. And so many other different kinds of cultural activities, as we have to say, we have shared cultural activities. Suppose we have same type of temples, same type of system of worshipping, although we follow Buddhism, or suppose Hinduism, or suppose Muslim, etc. Let's say everybody has got same type of supportive activity. Because I have seen many Muslim people also come to study here, madrasa or somewhere in India. And here also, from here also, they go to our madrasas there also. Many Buddhist academies also here and there are similar in situation. And so Hinduism also is here similar. Our same culture is here. We have no any difference. Our dress is also similar, or almost similarly relating to, except the Siral, except other dresses are also similar here. So our culture is similar, religion is similar. At least almost generally financial activity also, people have got same financial activity, generally related to their own structure. Say other religious activities, as we have to talk, suppose many Nepali people come to worship in Indian temples. Suppose they come to Kashi, Badri, Kedar, etc. in many other temples, just Vrindavan, Mathura, and here in Jagannath Puri also. And many Indian people go to worship in Pashupatinath and in many other remote areas temples also. So there is no any kind of restriction about cultural situation also here. And so what happened like this, not only this much, now India and Nepal, as they have been a kind of model for cooperative activities. So in such sense, we have to think that what has happened to Southeast Asia and Kalinga also. So we have to say like that, first of all, script was Sanskrit, and that same Sanskrit English, it was in India, Odisha, etc., in Nepal also, and during the time of Gautam Buddha also. Now Gautam Buddha used to speak in Sanskrit also. Generally, if I have read only but not known it, I am wrong, then excuse me for that. Then at that time, Sanskrit and Pali language, Gautam Buddha used to study in Sanskrit also, not only that much. Plato, Aristotle also, they also used Sanskrit language in their preaching system, or the teaching system in Greek culture previously. So this is very Sanskrit language, that is one of the most ancient language, which was originated in India, in Odisha also that was the language. So in this way, that is known as most developed ancient language till now. Now linguists say like that, many linguists say Sanskrit language has been so much developed language, and other languages are not so much developed till now. When sound system, when there is a kind of suppose long sound, at least there may be just 24 times suppose variation in our sound system according to Panini. Suppose scanned by technical situation, that is same. So so much developed language. So this language spread suppose in Southeast Asia also, Nepal also, in other parts of the world also. So India's contribution like this. So temple building also, same type of materials and tools have been used all over the world to build temples of the same type. And so this Kalinga, as just mostly Ashoka, after war, he went to Nepal. He visited Nepal. He visited Lumbini. He built their Ashok pillar. It is still there. He visited Kathmandu, and he went there with his daughter also, according to legend. And her name was Charumati. And the name of that place is named Chabahil, these days in Kathmandu. And so Odisha and Nepal have got such type of relationship. And the same type of relationship has been developed in Southeast Asian countries also. Suppose, let's say, Angkor Wat, and suppose in Bali also there is a Hindu temple, is it? So in this way, Kalinga, Odisha, and India, or Southeast Asia, or Nepal also, all these countries have got in a link. So maritime situation only, that traders with ship and boat, they pass from one place to another place, and they suppose they spread their culture, their religion, their civilization link. And so today civilization has been not a kind of objective only, but a kind of subjective thing also. Not only a kind of minor thing, but a kind of major thing. Now, without help of any country, a single country cannot develop today, because we are here in globalization. So also, spread of globalization, let's say, he visited Nepal also, he sent his persons in other countries also, outside India, Odisha, etc., because there are many other countries, and so Odisha has got such a much civilization link all over the world. So today I want to close only this much, because time is very short. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is Dr. Kaushik Gangopadhyay. He is Assistant Professor in the Department of Archaeology, Calcutta University. Dr. Gangopadhyay's archaeological fieldwork focuses on coastal Bengal and Odisha and their maritime links to the regions like Funan, Champa, and Java. We look forward to your presentation, sir. Yeah, you can use this.
Hello. So a very good afternoon to all the participants, delegates, and guests here. Professor C.P. Nanda, sir. And I'm really indebted to Professor Padi for inviting me to this ICICH conference. And when he asked me to come over, I couldn't say no, because I am a student of Utkal University. I got my PhD from the Department of AIHC under Professor Kishore Basa, who was also a part of this conclave. So first of all, I would like to admit that I am not a historiographer, and the panel in which I have been asked to speak is on historiography. So I am not a historiographer, I am an archaeologist, but I will try to sum up the kind of work that has been going on between regarding Kalinga and Southeast Asian connections. And while I discuss some of the more important works, I'll be missing many of them, because actually I have not myself read all of them, as she kindly pointed out that my work is specifically in Bengal and coastal Bengal. I have not worked in Odisha per se, but as I was traveling across the East Coast region to understand coastal Bengal, I have had the opportunity to look at some of the sites. So, PowerPoint, please. Yes. So, this is my topic: historiography of cultural interactions between India and between Kalinga and Southeast Asia. Of course, Kalinga is part of India. Next one. Next one. Yes, so if you can see the map over here, I have placed Kalinga at a particular regional context. Yes, thank you. Okay. All right. So you can see, when I think about Kalinga or any other region in this part of the country, I would also like to point out that we can also think about this entire region as part of the Bay of Bengal interaction sphere, a term which has been used by Dr. Sunil Gupta in one of his articles. So it's not just Kalinga that we are looking at, but on the Indian side we are looking at regions like Bengal or ancient Vanga, Tamaralipti, Kalinga, and of course down south you have the Cholas. And the time period that I'm talking about is between 3rd century BC and 3rd century AD. So I will not try to go beyond that. I believe there is another plenary session that takes us beyond this time period. But on the Southeast Asian side, I have actually pointed out an area with which I am accustomed, that is the area of Myanmar, or which was actually occupied by a culture known as the Pew culture, or the Pew civilization and the Mon civilization during the same time period. And of course, now we are getting a lot of archaeological data from Thailand, Cambodia, and also from Indonesia, Indonesian region that connects this entire Bay of Bengal region. Next one, please. Okay, thank you. So when I talk about historiography, the first book that comes to our mind, of course, is Radhakumud Mukherjee, that is History of Indian Shipping. And it is in this book that he talks about Kalinga and quote-unquote colonization of Java. Now in the morning we were discussing about this term. Lalit Mansingh ji talked about that we should discard this term colonization. And of course we have discarded this term colonization. But looking at it from historiographical point of view, if we look at books like History of Indian Shipping, then the term colonization has been specifically used by Radhakumud Mukherjee. Now, in his book, he talks about these adventurous people from Kalinga who colonized the island of Java, and these people were known as Kalinga. And he points out that this is from the mouth of the Krishna and the mouth of Krishna river and the Godavari and Krishna river, and it is from here that Pegu, that is Myanmar, Cambodia, and finally Java was colonized, right? And it is during this phase that we also find that other scholars who talk about Indian art and architecture that reached out from India into Southeast Asia, right? However, this idea of colonization, as Professor K.K. Basa has pointed out in his seminal article that he published in 1993, that he talked about this period of Indian writings on Southeast Asia and talked about the pre-nationalist, nationalist, and post-nationalist phase, right? And he talks about the works of R.C. Majumdar. And here, when Professor Basa, in his writings, he has pointed out the post-nationalist phase. He talks about that Southeast Asian region were also acting as agent. So we see that, over a period of time, from the nationalist writings on Southeast Asia, from the Indian perspective, to the post-nationalist phase, there was obviously the term colonization was discarded, right? As we were talking about in the morning. Professor Basa himself studied the glass beads, for example, from India and Southeast Asia, and he talked about the southwesterly trade of the Southeast Asian economy. And he used what is called the world system model and the core periphery model. So, in a historiographic context, these ideas which were introduced by Professor Basa as India being the core and some of the Southeast Asian regions as periphery was quite useful to actually interrogate the archaeological data. At the same time, we have scholars like Professor Ian Glover and Berenice Bellina who looked at the problem from a Southeast Asian perspective. And they asked as whether the Southeast Asians were actually in the periphery or whether they were equal partners or equally participating in this westerly trade of Southeast Asia. And finally, we come to, as Professor Basa has pointed out in his writing, that specific regions in the post-nationalist phase, in the pre-nationalist phase and the nationalist phase, most of the writings talks about India as a whole. But as Professor Basa points out, that in the post-nationalist phase, regions are coming up. So it is in this context that region like Kalinga is being mentioned. And we also have this work by Christie, J.W. Christie. It was published in 1998 in the Journal of Southeast Asian Studies. And J.W. Christie talks about, the cotton trade of Kalinga and how the inscriptions from Java actually supports the cotton trade of Kalinga. And she has pointed out several of these inscriptions, particularly from the early medieval phase, and he also says that cling, this term is a blanket term. This is used by Christie herself. She says that the term cling is a blanket term covering all South Asian coming to the Indonesian archipelago. So this is what my earlier scholar was saying, that we needn't look at Kalinga as just a region, but also representing India as a whole, and maybe as a part of a global network, or at least in the network in the Indian Ocean region. Now, from the archaeological perspective, I have several names. I'm sorry, I've just missed Professor Patit Pawan Mishra ji here. That's a typo mistake. I apologize for that. But these are some of the leading scholars. We have Professor Karuna Sindhu Behera, Professor K.K. Basa, and the excavations that have been carried out by Professor Ravi Mohanty and Monica Smith, excavations by Sunil Patnaik ji, who I'm sure will be coming here tomorrow, and of course Sila Tripathi ji. So these archaeologists have now brought up, or they have exhumed a lot of archaeological data from this region of Kalinga, which gives a new light to this problem. So you see that if we look at the archaeological data again from historical perspectives, we see that these are the sites like Shishupalgarh, Radhanagar, then Masulipattanam, Ghantashala, Kalingapattanam, Pallur. So these are some of the sites, and if you read the archaeological literature, all or most of these sites other than Shishupalgarh has been mentioned as port sites. So these are some of the, this is Gaurangapatna on the Chilka Lake, on the right is Manikpatna. I'm sure many of you know about these sites. This is Radhanagar, and I'll be coming back to this Radhanagar site because I have something a little bit to contribute to this entire problem. And on the right you can see these are the gateways of Shishupalgarh. This is just to give us a visuals of the region. All right. Now, if we read the archaeological literature, going away from the art historical and other literature or literature that deals with inscription, we find that one class of artifact, which is pottery, that is taking the center stage. Particularly pottery like rouletted ware. Now, this pottery, when it was found from various sites, particularly along the east coast of India, it was thought to be a Roman import. But later on, works of Viswas Gokte, it pointed out that this pottery was actually possibly produced at Tamluk, which is identified with Tamralipti and Chandraketugarh in Bengal. Of course, Dr. Vimla Begle, who re-excavated Arikamedu, a key site in South India, does not agree with him, and she says that this pottery was possibly produced in South India. Now, according to Sila Tripathi, I have read some of his articles, he claims that this pottery was produced at sites like Salihundam, Satanikot, Kesarpalli, and distributed all over the region. So there is, this problem has not been solved. Archaeologists are taking recourses to scientific analysis to look at the distribution of this pottery, and you do find this pottery in Kalinga, Odisha region, as also in place like Sembrian in Bali. One of the sites that you find is rouletted ware, particularly, and several other sites across Southeast Asia. So these are some of the pottery which have been used by the archaeologists to understand cultural interactions. Okay, so on the left you have, on the left you have this dish type pottery that is called rouletted ware. It is known as rouletted ware simply because of this design, the rouletted design in the center of the dish. But there is another class of pottery on which Sila Tripathi, particularly who's present here, has written extensively, that is knobbed ware. So this knobbed ware, you find them from this early historic context from all over Kalinga region or Odisha region, but you also find them in Southeast Asia from Thailand, and recently from my own excavations in Bengal, we also find this type of knobbed ware in coastal region of Bengal. So we can now start to use pottery as a major indicator of this cultural interaction, right? And coming to the medieval period, one question is always, which has been asked, is whether we are talking about pottery that is possibly traveling from the east coast of India or the Indian side across the Bay of Bengal to the Southeast Asia. But wasn't any pottery coming towards our side? Possibly they were. We are not just being able to identify. There is a site called Kotapattanam in Andhra Pradesh where K.P. Rao has actually pointed out the evidence of pottery coming from Southeast Asia. But I would like to take your attention to this pottery on your left side, on your left. This is called the Martaban ware. Now this pottery was, the photograph was kindly supplied to me by OMCIAS, by Dr. Sunil Patnaik, and there's the same pottery that you find in Burma. But they are not early historic, but medieval context. And on the right side, this is one that was discovery of my team, myself and my team, which we have published in a journal called The Heritage. So this pottery has been found, you can see that with those strap handles from a site called Jairampur, which is in the Balasore district. And it is actually, it was a 6th century monastery. There is an inscription from it. But this monastery, it is known for its monastery and its image of Tara, but it also could have acted as a port, because we have found this kind of pottery, which could have actually been coming from Southeast Asia. So I'm not really sure about its origin, but this can be placed under the class of what is called Martaban jar. Why Martaban jar? Because they were produced at a place called Martaban or Muttama, that is in Lower Burma region. And now I'm coming to the end of my discussion with 2 more slides. So this is an ongoing research which we have published as in this journal called Journal of Archaeological Science Reports. This research was carried out incidentally with a grant from UGC UP, that is India Looking East, and we received some grant from the UGC in order to visit Myanmar and to study pottery tradition between India and Myanmar. And these are some of the sites from where we have collected pottery, and we have analyzed them by using scientific methods such as X-ray fluorescence analysis, ICP-MS, and there are several other scientific analysis which was carried out on these pottery sherds. We wanted to find out whether the elemental composition, you see every pottery is made up of clay, and the clay has minerals and elements. This is basic chemistry. So if you can match the elements, then you can say whether one pottery moved from one region to the other. This is called provenance studies. So we have actually, I'll be not talking about the entire research, but just I would like to take your attention to these 2 sites, Radhanagar and Shishupalgarh, which gave us samples for this study, and we matched them. These are the pottery sherds which we got from Myanmar with permission from the Myanmar government. This was done in 2019 from the Ministry of Culture, Myanmar government. And the result, this is my last slide, is quite interesting. You see, number 11 and 12, they are from Radhanagar and Shishupalgarh. And number 3 and 4 are from sites in Myanmar, particularly Baikthano, Shri Kshetra. There are several sites. I'm not going to details of them. But you see how closely they match. The trace element. So we are not talking about only the major elements, but elements which are found in traces. So they match very closely. And we have argued that this is the beginning of this kind of study where we can actually match pottery from regions across Southeast Asia and regions like Kalinga and other regions of India, and we can look at the degree and scale of interaction. Particularly, I have taken the case of potters, because if we go back again, looking at historiography, scholars talked about migration of artists. But recent excavations at Khao Khao by Berenice Bellina, the report is already out. Now they have specifically, that's in Thailand, it's in the Krav Isthmus, they have Berenice Bellina, she has actually pointed out 2 specific regions within the site which was used by the Indian potters. So we can now think about Indian potters migrating, and of course, as I said, we also have to look for Southeast Asian pottery in India, but that can be done only through scientific analysis, because visually at times, common pottery is very difficult to differentiate because they will look all the same. So now we are taking, from a historiographic perspective, more of scientific archaeology is possibly needed. And my last slide would be, so migration of craftsmen through Kalinga to Southeast Asia. And then we can look at other objects such as animals like war horses, elephants, going from Kalinga region. In this context, a seal, which was actually published by Professor Ranabir Chakraborty from Chandraketugarh, from Bengal, shows a horse within a ship, right? And this kind of movement is not only from Chandraketugarh or Bengal. This could have taken place even from the region of Kalinga. And of course, elephants, because Periplus talks about the big black elephants, which were, important resources from Odisha. Then ethnographic rituals such as we have Boita Bandhana and Bali Yatra, which should be looked into as cultural memory. And finally, we should also look at if we get skeletons of humans. You know, now we are looking at DNA analysis. So no work, not much work has been done. So we do have skeletons from Southeast Asia. We do get skeletons from many of the particularly Neolithic sites in Kalinga region. So can we do some DNA analysis and try to see whether there are some matches or not? So I think moving ahead, because ultimately historiography means have to have a critical look at the available literature and to, you know, have a chart a course. And finally, I would end by saying that it's fascinating to see that how ancient data or ancient or past, how it is rooted in contemporary geopolitical situation, and how we are trying to also invoke the past in order to situate ourselves in the geopolitical region that we are in. And I think that this kind of discourse needs to be done, and this is the way forward in future. Thank you for patience listening.
Thank you so much, sir, for an intriguing session. We just have 5 minutes for question answers. So if you have any questions, only 2 questions, direct questions, if audience have any. Yeah.
Namaskar. Thank you, Professor Nanda and friends. So, Tarima Kasi, Dr. Nia, you brought many important insights to the conversation. And my query is that in your plea for looking at Kalinga civilization, not just as confined to Odisha and India, it is in that context, what is the Indonesian construction of Kalinga civilization and what are some of its elements? Secondly, if we have to go beyond a colonization paradigm, then historically what kind of interactions happened which is non-colonizing? Third, this way of looking at civilization, because our approach to civilization has been very much road-centric, but this idea of an open ocean, so how do we develop an oceanic approach to civilization, and therefore a kind of an interaction of the road and the oceanic approach, and therefore rethinking civilizational dynamics in human history?
Thank you so much for the question from Mr. Anand. You basically have 3 questions. You have 3 questions, right? The first one is to, you asked me whether I have found information directly on Odisha and Southeast Asia, right? Mentioning Odisha. So this is the first one, okay. So because my research, the nature of my research is 18th century to the 19th century, these 200 years, I have not come across significant mention of, interaction between traders, traders between Odisha and Malay Peninsula, Singapore, the Strait settlements at that time, or small petty kingdoms. Maybe because what I study is just only through text, okay? I study textual, all this kind of text produced in those 200 years. Meaning that maybe if we do some kind of archaeological works like what Professor Kausik has done, we could probably found a further narrative, a further agency, a narrative that could build a relation between Odisha and all the agencies in Southeast Asia. So yeah, we are open. I don't know, because at that time it was not Odisha, right? It was Orissa. And then, and before that, I think the names also kind of not the same with what we have read in the 19th century newspaper, for instance. If we talk about 16th century Odisha, what was it called? So that sort of thing, from the local knowledges, I have not found significant mention, or maybe it has not been identified yet. What was it at the time in the local text? The second question is about open ocean. Is it? Is about open ocean term whether to what extent we can apply this one in terms of theoretical or realities. So this question is very relevant today. Yeah, even today, you know, it is not only all that past, because today, with the decline of the U.S., for instance, the decline of the liberal order, the rise of the authoritarianism, realist type of approach in terms of leadership of the global order, I think this open order oceans gonna be more, you know, gonna give more opportunities for, you know, for numerous state or non-state actors to build their international economic networks. And I believe it's not going to be easy because we've been like 100 years already, you know, relying on the state facilitated type of, you know, collaboration, bilateralism, that sort of things, corporate, affiliated state, you know, mechanism. So it's not going to be easy, but meaning that trade should be open to all the powers. It should not be monopolized by the superpowers, let's say between China, currently superpowers like China, the US, right, and rising regional power, superpower India, for instance. There shouldn't be this open oceanic approach should not be hindered by the superpower competition above, who want to monopolize certain aspect of natural resources, for instance, the oils, yeah, or the gold in those small states or middle power states, such as Indonesia, for instance, or that islands, or Malaysia, you know, or that small states in Africa, for instance. So it should be equal. There should be more approach towards multilateralism, I would say, meaning that international organizations should be given more credential in terms of, you know, check and balance on how to ensure this open, you know, oceanic type of economic approach, you know, should be accountable and just for everybody. Yeah, so, yeah, please remind me the third question, I think. What else? You have one more question.
Because your reflection points to a new way of looking at civilization. It is in that context. We are suffering from a road-centric approach to civilization, like Silk Road approach. So it is in that context an oceanic approach and the Silk Road approach, how we would have to cross-fertilize what Sugata Bose called a maritime network approach and road approach together for a new understanding of civilizations in history.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, okay. Oh, you mentioned Silk Road. Silk Road. Okay, all right. I think this question is, again, I mean, it's a very trending issue, right? Silk Road is like, this has been adopted by China, isn't it? It is Belt and Road initiatives since 2013, or the Pearl String Strategy further in 2009, right? It has been adopted by China. But, well, in fact, we know other civilizations kind of involved in it too, right? Like India and other, you know, areas in Southeast Asia, the Siam, and etc. It's the involvement kind of global, but so far it has been championed by the strategic foreign policy by China. Of course, I mean, like open oceanic, again, this is gonna counteract to what the superpower has been doing, you know? Of course, at the end of the day, the superpower can compete because they have the capacity, they have the economical capacity, they have military technological capacity. That's why they could, you know, kind of play in some sort of, you know, hegemonic way in this sense because of that capacity. That's why people like us, scholars like me, would like to say, you know, toward that kind of superpowers that open oceanic should be prioritized through multilateralism. And regarding the Kalinga civilization, yeah, of course, isn't it? I mean, like, the Silk Road was presided by China because of they produced a lot of textiles made from silk. But India also plays some kind of contributive roles in that sense. So yeah, I mean, like where this sort of thing gonna go, it's depend on what kind of national interest that states want to play in the global affairs, and what kind of power capacity that state has. But for us, the common people, we're just the common people who want to live in peace and equality. Probably, the open order type of economic interdependency probably going to be ideals, for the welfare of everyone. Okay, I think that's all we can debate, further.
Thank you. If you have any questions, you can ask the panel members after this session or during the dinner time. It is my privilege now to invite our chairperson of the session, Professor Chandi Prasad Nandaji. He would offer the concluding reflections of today's session.
Namaskar. Very good afternoon to everybody here, including my co-panelists. Yeah, this has been absolutely very fascinating in terms of a lot of ideas and insights which have been thrown open to on this session by our co-panelists. In fact, let me try to just quickly look back on what has been discussed so far. We had a good reflections coming from Dr. Gangopadhyay, who talked about Sri Lanka and Odisha relations, and also had a lot of policy interventions in certain ways about how to develop, and based on that historical linkage, how do we develop these collaborations further, something like that. And particularly now, as we look at the kind of conversation that we had with Nila's paper, something which is very interesting. In fact, what drew me to that paper was the idea of, these categories of nation doesn't hold, as he was trying to argue very passionately, saying that that was the time when you try to look back, then this categories of nation doesn't hold. And in that context, he was trying to look at a rather larger, non-hegemonic liberal order. That is how one has to look at Southeast Asia from that point of view. Whenever we are talking about these connections, why not also think of a kind of order, what that is order. We were trying to problematize that order, but again, the kind of interjections which has come from, obviously, one of the very leading eminent thinkers of our time, Anandji, is about how to problematize ocean versus sea, that is what she was trying to propose. She was trying to also point to some of the major works in that regime, which has come in the recent past, including Sugata Bose, where we need to think of Southeast Asia and Kalinga connections, or Southeast Asia Indian connection, not only from a kind of very given, or what do you call these shibboleths, that these connections between two, terra space existed or something like that. But we need to go beyond that, that oceanic term, that has to be problematized. And how do we problematize this is the challenge for historiography, as towards the last speaker, very interestingly said. He was a self-disclaimer saying that he's not into historiography, he's an anthropologist, but obviously historiography is, the scope and the gauge of historiography is no more, confined to history anymore. It is a lot of interdisciplinarity, lot of disciplinary practices are getting into it. So whenever we are trying to conceptualize a theme like this connect between Kalinga and Southeast Asia, we are obviously thinking of the present, thinking of our own identity, something like that. So coming back to that interesting paper by Neela where he tried to talk about this. I would say that it was a larger cosmological order that we have to also envisage. And this is where this thing has to be, this question from this, at least observation from Anandji has to be, responded to. This is how I look at it. Now, obviously, when the last paper, which was by Gangopadhyay, he was trying to problematize Kalinga, Kling, and also along with Nile, and he was trying to talk about a lot of works which have really been done in the recent times, including the archaeological research, archaeological works, and trying to make a subtle, nuanced distinction between nationalist, post-nationalist paradigm and something like that. But after getting into all these papers, some of the silences, some of the gaps which can still be visible, obviously not from the point of view of the scholars who have presented very interesting papers, but at least to a historian, what strikes immediately when he thinks of a theme like this is basically what I feel that where did the historiography itself has a oceanic turn. If we go back to the historiographic discourse, then obviously the first thing that comes to mind, because of history being framed in a typical modernist orientation and with post-enlightenment tradition or rationalist tradition, so we immediately encounter Brodel, Annal School in 1949, who talked about Mediterranean. But then again, he was talking about these three empires, like Jewish, Islam, and the Christian empires. But I think that was one of the major turns in whenever we try to look at modern history, that ocean turn came. But for South Asia, and this, when we try to specifically map this Southeast Asian connection, then the turn perhaps came with many people, like N.K. Chaudhary's 1985 works, or after that, Sanjay Subramaniam or Daud Ali, or for that matter, in the recent times, whether it is Reela Mukherjee or Sugata Bose, and particularly what has really kept my interest very, passionately with this book is called by, Sundaram, this Sujit Sundaram, who tries to talk about, a kind of post-decolonial perspective. He tries to see that why not provincialize the ocean, how to, in the line of provincializing Europe, he is trying to talk about provincializing ocean. So if you look at this genre of writings, where we see a kind of perspective which is coming up, that one has to see this current geopolitical dynamics, plus the question of social history, For example, from the Odishan context, I can at least immediately cite one very interesting book called Rengun Gita, which was authored in 1922, which talks about the Odias migrating to Rangoon, and how they look at this state and the society at that point of time. And this is a kind of conversation between a wife and a husband, and they're trying to reflect on the nature of this society that is in Southeast Asia, and the sea voyage and the kind of trauma associated with this, migration, this diasporic community that going. So this is one thing that this is a lot of emotion, lot of sentiments are getting associated with this kind of, reflections. So what Sugata Bose is trying to talk about very interestingly in his book, that what is more important is to look at a kind of subaltern seascape where you find emotional, ideological, and very popular dimensions of maritime space. This is something to do with affective geographies, insurgent visions, dreams, political hopes, sacred wings, anti-colonial solidarities. And so this is something that one has to think of as far as when we try to problematize ocean and also see these connections. And there is also to think of cosmological concepts, political longings. Similarly, when we get on to the work of Sundaram, Sundaram is a very interesting discourse which very clearly hammers at the Eurocentric epistemes that have shaped much of our maritime historiography. In texts such as Waves Across the South 2020 and also Island 2013, he challenges colonial mappings, the sea as empty, chartable space, what he calls the imperial oceanic imaginary, and restores the agency of indigenous seafarers, navigators, cosmologists. In this oceanic turn, aligning strongly with efforts to reframe the Indian Ocean as a world made through local knowledge, ritual, community-based navigation. So this is what provincializing Europe ocean could mean, where you try to get into the life worlds of pilots, astrologers, boat rides, map makers, monks, missionaries, many people, those who have been silenced, those who have so far been disadvantaged by a historical discourse, they come into the picture. So it is time that as we try to look at these connections or try to problematize the ocean, these are the people, their agencies become very important, become very seminal, that we need to also engage with. So this is what could be a kind of shift in the epistemic engagement. I'll also finally conclude with Reela Mukherjee's book, which also is very important, which came in 2022, called India in the Indian Ocean World, from the earliest times to 1800. So she departs from the older empire-centric and diffusionist model and privileges port points, not imperial capitals, as the key units of analysis. These were fluid nodes of ritual convergences and economic encounter, often situated on the edges of territorial empires, yet central to trans-regional connectivity. Her framing of sites like Palur, a port in ancient Kalinga mentioned by Ptolemy, evidenced by Buddhist archaeological remains, reveals how maritime South Asia was structured around non-linear networks. You all know that how this connection of Palur or this port near Dhamara was very vibrant at that point of time. Mukherjee emphasizes multi-scalar agencies, foregrounding not only kings or guild elites, but also monks, artisans, boat builders, temple priests, fisherfolk, local patrons, many other people. The sea becomes a contested site. It becomes a contested commons, a space where sacred economies were co-constructed and where knowledge and sovereignty were constantly renegotiated. So she also brings into our view the idea of you thinking of loops, networks, and feedbacks to understand oceanic historiography. Rather than viewing influence as one way or this idea of diffusionism or center-periphery binary, some of these theses which have already afflicted our intellectual landscape needs to be broken, needs to be somewhat challenged by looking at a lot of conceptual technology, bringing a lot of conceptual technology like this into our account. So finally, I'll not try to get into some of these writings anymore because of paucity of time. We have been asked to wind up this session quite soon. So, what I would like to suggest that as we engage with the question of exploring what could have been the possible thriving, the possible nature of connection between Kalinga and Southeast Asia, and the road ahead and the roadmap for us as we do this seminar, this conference here. How do we translate into a policy intervention? How do we try to look back and feel, proud of our, very proud past or very thriving past? And how we try to translate some of these ideas into action, some kind of realistic models. Then we also need to engage with this whole range of works that have come in the last decade or so, and try to see, what ideas and insights they are throwing up, and whether it is a question of looking at whether from this Terra-centric, Terra-biased understanding to getting into an aquatic whole cosmology, how we do that, how this shift comes into play, and in the context of geopolitics, in the context of the expected developed economy by 2036 or 2047, how do we approach this idea of water, sea, and ocean today is the major challenge for all of us. And I think some of these presentations, along with the kind of new thoughts and the kind of research into archaeology, history, anthropology, and social history, the way they have produced the imaginary, these needs to be, framed into much larger discourses, bringing in a lot of multidisciplinarity into play. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nanda, for your insightful and grounding remarks. Your words have added great value to the conclusion we draw from this dialogue, especially situating Kalinga at the heart of both regional pride and global connectivity. Now may I request Shri Sanjeev Kumar Mishra ji, Honorable Principal Secretary, to please be on the dais to felicitate the panel members.
Aditi ki taka. Huh.
Thank you, sir, for felicitating the panelists. Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yes. As we come to the closure of this intellectually stimulating session, I am filled with both the sense of fulfillment and curiosity. Fulfillment because today's discussion brought a light, rich and nuanced historiography of age-old cultural dialogue between Kalinga and Southeast Asia. And curiosity because so much remains to be explored, connected and understood. Let us not think this as a conclusion of this session, but a starting point for a deeper collaborative research, policy-level thinking, and grassroots cultural engagement. I invite you all for the next session, and I formally announce that this session is concluded. Thank you.
Distinguished delegates, as we transition from the profound insights of our first plenary session, where the cultural tapestry connecting Kalinga and Southeast Asia was so vividly illuminated, we now move forward to an equally compelling discourse that bridges the past with the present. It is my privilege to announce that we'll now be delving into the second plenary session, which is titled The Dynamics of Geopolitics and Soft Power, with Odisha as the focal point. This session promises to explore how Odisha's civilizational legacy continues to inform and inspire its modern geopolitical identity, offering a nuanced lenses into the power of cultural diplomacy and regional influence. To chair this important dialogue, I am honored to invite on stage, on the dais, Ambassador Lalit Mansingh, who has been the former Foreign Secretary, Government of India, a statesman whose distinguished career embodies the very essence of a strategic foresight and cultural outreach. Sir. Joining him are our eminent speakers. We have Dr. Abu Bakr Ebihara, the Senior Lecturer, Department of International Relations, University of Jember, Indonesia. We have Professor Dr. R. Siva Perigazam, former Associate Professor, University, Uttara, Malaysia. We have Dr. Binay Kumar Mishra, Head of the Department, Ancient Indian and Asian Studies, PLS College, Patna. And last but not the least, we have Dr. Priyadarshi Das, Associate Professor, RIS, New Delhi. And to adeptly steer this session, I have the pleasure of inviting our esteemed moderator, Mr. Anil Dhir, conservationist and convener, INTAC, Bhubaneswar. Let us now delve into this vital conversation where heritage meets strategy and where Odisha's soft power potential is placed on the global map with scholarly precision.
Jai Jagannath. Good afternoon. The eminences on the dais and eminences of the dais, students, academicians, Kalingans, who are all gathered here for this post-lunch session. Welcome you back for the third plenary session. This session is an important one in as much as, besides discussing, to look forward, we have to look behind. We have been doing that since the morning. So this session is on the dynamics of geopolitics and soft power, obviously with Odisha as the focal point. I'll just start the floor running. We all know that the geopolitical composition of India and obviously Kalinga is impacted foremost by its location in South Asia. We are a vantage or a disadvantage point, have been historically, and we still are. This region is well known for historical antagonism. Its cultural diversity, we have been hearing since the morning from all our delegates who have come from so many different countries. And end of the day, in the present context, the economic competition. This South Asian region is also referred as the IOR, the Indian Ocean region. It's among one of the most significant regions in global politics, was, is, and in the days to come will remain. Why is it most strategically important? It is because of its location, like I told you earlier. Its location, the natural resources of all the countries which are there in this region, and basically the trade movement, historically, contemporary, and with the future perspective too. The IOR, that is the Indian Ocean region, which is located at the juncture of 3 continents, Asia, Africa, and Australia. Practically around 80% of the world population. it's an important maritime corridor through which a significant share of the world's today, the most important thing, the fuel and the goods passed. This geopolitically significant region is the area of focus as it contains the region that is important for trade and navigated by very powerful countries. Economically powerful, militarily powerful, powerful by the sheer population size, powerful by the way of the past, the heritage and the history. Coupled with the Indian Ocean regions or the IOR, which is the gate, which is of very, very great importance to India. Well, it's also named the IOR, in fact. Our country, and obviously once again I say Odisha, the relevance is further justified because it is the connect of South Asia with the Middle East, Southeast Asia and other regions. All of these require maritime activities focused on trade. This continues, for it. We have with us 4 panelists, who will be speaking and deliberating on very, very important aspects. And we have made a chronological this thing from the earliest to the latest. I'll just introduce. The chairperson of this plenary session is His Excellency Ambassador Lalit Mansingh. The presence here itself in the morning in the inaugural session, you heard about him. I think I should repeat it because once again we see the soft power of Kalinga in the geopolitics, and he is a living epitome of the soft power. Ambassador Mansingh, we heard in the morning too, he has served as the Foreign Secretary, the Ambassador to the United States, and High Commissioner to the United Kingdom. I think 3 of the hottest seats in the foreign services. He has also been Ambassador to the United Arab Emirates and the High Commissioner to Nigeria, where there is concurrent accreditation to Benin, Chad, and the Cameroons. Sir joined the Indian Foreign Service in 1963, one of the first Orias to be inducted into the Foreign Service. After his initial posting in Geneva, he has served as the Deputy Chief of Mission in the Indian Embassies at Kabul, Brussels, Washington. At the headquarters in Delhi, Ambassadors Mansingh and assignment included Joint Secretary in the Ministry of Finance. He was the Director General of the ICCR, much more relevant student at that time. A lot of impetus on the cultural relationship of Odisha, Kalinga and India with the South East Asian diaspora was very much worked upon. He was the Dean of the Foreign Service Institute and the Secretary in the Ministry of External Affairs. He was a member of the International Crisis Group based in Brussels and was a part of the Track 2 dialogues between India and the neighbors, including Pakistan, Sri Lanka and Afghanistan. He continues to be a member of the Asia Pacific Leadership Network based in Canberra. And I'll just tell you to just start it. Just 2 days ago, we heard the news about Afghanistan under the Taliban regime. It has shown an openness and engaging itself in the China's Belt and Road Initiative. We knew what happened in Doklam. We know what happened throughout the border and the BRA initiative of China, how it wants a pincer movement, road system, and the ports have been established everywhere we know. But when Afghanistan becomes a part of Pakistan and China's, the China-Pacific Economic Corridor, when Afghanistan becomes it, it rattles India. It rattles India to the extent is we have been consistently opposing it because it involves construction to the POK. In fact, it came as a shock because in the recent crisis, geopolitically with Pakistan, it seemed that Afghanistan had maintained a sort of a neutral stand. But just 2 days before when it joined the initiative, it comes as a shock to India. This I'm only telling because of geopolitics. We'll go ahead. We'll be hearing a lot. The opening remarks by His Excellency Ambassador Mansingh, he will be speaking. And then in the order, And we'll take questions after everything is over. We'll take questions from the audience. Thank you. We look forward to a very interesting session.
Thank you, Mr. Dheer, for that introduction. Now, this session is going to be a rather unusual session because we have so far heard from scholars and historians who have studied the past. The past meaning going back to the 5th century BCE and tracing the relations between Kalinga and Southeast Asia. Now remember that Kalinga almost disappeared from the pages of history after the 15th century. So what are we talking about? When you talk about the contemporary relevance of the Kalinga experience, we are looking at something totally new. And for historians, I'm afraid this session is going to be somewhat radically different from what we have been discussing so far. And why is it going to be different? Because we are looking at a new situation which were not there in the past, and we are going to use a lot of new terms which were not used in past history. Now, you have heard a lot of people, including myself, talk about soft power. Now, how many of us know what exactly this soft power is? This is actually a relatively new concept. It was started by a Harvard professor of political science and international affairs who made a distinction between hard power and soft power. And he defined hard power as something that a state can use, like armed forces, like economic power. This is what a state can use and demonstrate that it has power. But soft power is difficult to define. And according to the classical definition, soft power cannot be used. Yeah, okay. Soft power cannot be used because you cannot quantify soft power. Let me say that if you have a piece of land which your father has, you have inherited from your father, you actually don't know what the actual value is because you have never tried to sell it in the market. But if you have a lot of land, you have access to a lot of money that can come from that land. So soft power is something like this. It's like reputation. You have a reputation, and there comes a time when you can take advantage of that reputation. And therefore, you can add it. And what is, in economic terms, it's fungible. So this is what is soft power. That Kalinga has acquired a connotation of people who came from this part of India, who explored Southeast Asia, did maritime contacts and trading with those countries, and they had a reputation for not being violent, not being aggressive, and they were instrumental in a peaceful exchange of culture. This is what is called the civilizational contacts. Now, can we use this reputation of Kalinga and use it to the benefit of the successor state of Kalinga, which is the state of Odisha today? And so it requires a lot of imagination to understand what we are talking about. So let me tell you, we are talking about new groupings. We are talking about new countries, new powers, which were not known in the past. So we are talking a lot about the Indo-Pacific. This too is fairly new. There was no such thing as the Indo-Pacific maybe 20 years ago, because many people use the Far East to denote that region. We often use Southeast Asia to denote that smaller group of countries. But in recent times, Southeast Asia, the Indian subcontinent, and the East Asian countries have come together in one coherent group. And that is now called the Indo-Pacific. in terms of its territorial coverage, it's also vague, but the Americans have said it is between Bollywood and Hollywood. That means you start from the western coast of India and you go up to the western coast of the United States. This is what you're talking about. This is what the Japanese Prime Minister Abe used to talk about, the union of oceans. We are merging the Indian Ocean with the Pacific Ocean, and that is becoming Indo-Pacific, right? It's not as people imagine named after India, although we like to think that Indo part of it is India, but it's actually the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean which constitutes the Indo-Pacific. This is a new grouping, fairly new. We are talking of formations which did not exist in the past, like SARC is a contemporary creation. BIMSTEC came even later than SARC, and I think BIMSTEC is going to be discussed in this conference. We are talking of formations like Quad. Now, Quad is not even 15 years old. It is a grouping of 4 countries, that's why it's called Quad. And now there is a new variation, which is now called the Squad, because the Philippines has joined in a grouping, and that is separate from the 4 countries of the Quad. Okay. So what I'm trying to say is, a lot of new concepts, a lot of new regions have come. And another thing that has happened, perhaps right now, when we are going through this year, a new phenomenon has appeared in the form of President Trump. I do not know how international relations will be written about in the future, but I suspect that 2 new influences will be coming and playing a big part in the history of our region. And the 2 new phenomenons, actually I'm personalizing it. I'm saying it is pre-Trump and post-Trump, okay? This is a dividing line. But actually, the geopolitical term would be the decline of the United States as the unipolar power of the world. United States is no longer the predominant, the strongest, the richest country in the world. In many ways, it's much more advanced than anybody else. But in terms of wealth accumulation, there is a new challenger, and that is China. China is now close, and in many ways, China has overtaken the United States in many areas. So the fate of our region will be decided by what happens to the United States, what happens to China, what happens to the relations between them, and there is a third angle to this triangle, and that is a question mark right now, but I think it will definitely be a triangle, and that is India. India is going to be a major player because if you're looking at the size of the economy, India is number 5. In 3 years' time, India will be number 3. According to Jeffrey Sachs, a very well-respected economist, by the middle of the century, the size of India's economy will overtake the United States. So you'll have a new order of wealth, China, India, United States, and so on. So these are the imponderables that we are discussing. And then we are discussing another huge leap. We are discussing the Indo-Pacific as a large new area, and we are discussing Odisha as a tiny dot in that area. But because we are in Odisha, we are discussing the future of Odisha. And this is the connection. The future of Odisha is tied up with the future of the Indo-Pacific. The centrality of the Indo-Pacific lies in ASEAN, which is basically Southeast Asia. And therefore, what we are discussing in this discussion group with these very eminent experts is how do we connect old Kalinga with today's Odisha? How do you connect Southeast Asia and India of those days with the Indo-Pacific of today, where we are all together in one area? So I will stop here, I'm not here to lecture you. I'm only wanting to give the backdrop of the discussions. And as we have decided, in terms of thematics, we will start from ancient history and bring you forward, as our colleagues have agreed, to the contemporary period and deal with the specific issues of Odisha's position, of formations like BIMSTEC, of Indo-Pacific and so on. So I am looking forward, like all of you, to a very interesting discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Excellency. Like Sir rightly said, to look forward, we have to look back. The next person, the next gentleman, Dr. Abu Bakar Ebihara, the senior lecturer in the Department of International Relations in the University of Jember, Indonesia. Dr. Hara has previously served as the visiting lecturer in the University of Uttara, Malaysia, and a visiting research fellow in the University of Leeds. He has earned his PhD from the Australian National University with support from an USAID scholarship. His research focuses on ASEAN cooperation, Indonesian foreign policy, and democracy in Southeast Asia. Heritage diplomacy is a very important subject, at least in this conference. And pre-colonial international relationships in the global south. His recent publications appear in Japanese journals of political science, Astropolitics, Cosmopolitan Civil Society Journal, and the Journal of Southeast Asian Human Rights. We look forward to Dr. Ebihara's talk. Sir.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, Ambassador, and thank you for the introduction from the moderator, and also it is very interesting to hear the introduction from Ambassador Lalit Mang-Singh. So actually, I have presented my paper earlier, so what I'm going to do this afternoon is to put my presentation in the concept of soft power, as mentioned by Mr. Ambassador. In the soft power context, what Kalinga has conducted in the past, I think exactly implemented the concept of soft power. Because as I mentioned here, sorry, how to move it. Because here, as I mentioned in my presentation, Kalinga kingdoms can be mentioned as civilizational actor. So this time we talk about the state as an actors in international relations, but in the pre-colonial period, what Kalinga has conducted can be seen as a civilizational actor, because he used civilization to approach Southeast Asia, and as I also explained in my presentation, the concept like mandala system and also Hindu, Buddhist ideas, and the important things what Kalinga did in the past in the context of Indianization. We talk a lot about Indianizations. The Indianization, according to Prof. Acharya, is not similar to colonization. So what Kalinga did is the Indianization was a constitutive and selective process. Southeast Asia elites adapted Indian ideas to local needs. And then, as an example, I mentioned about Mandala system, Devaraja kingships, and all of these concepts are locally reinterpreted by kingdoms like Sriwijaya, Majapahit, and also Hindu-Buddhist ideas merged with indigenous animisms and cosmologies. Indian culture did not erase the local, it fused with it. What emerged were hybrid systems where Indian ideas were reshaped into Southeast Asian forms. So rather than a narrative of dominance, we see Indianization as a civilizational diplomacy. So this is one example of soft power. So civilizational diplomacy. That happened before the colonial came. But after the colonial is mentioned, so there's a kind of interrupted what was introduced during the colonial time is the Western concept of nation state, the Westphalia system, and diplomacy is military diplomacy, is a hard power diplomacy, it's not anymore soft power diplomacy. So this has been explained. And now I think I want to move to the contemporary relevance of this soft power diplomacy that has been conducted in the past. I think ASEAN mirrors the Mandela principle. It implemented the consensus, flexibility, and symbolic diplomacy. And also, the historical experience of Kalinga and South Asia still resonates today. ASEAN principle of non-intervention, consensus, soft diplomacy reflected the Mandela values. Also, the pre-colonial Southeast Asia saw the sea as a connective space, not a contested one. So today, in the Pacific tensions, like in the South China Sea, can benefit from this shared historical lens of connectivity. So rather than viewing the sea as a battleground, we can draw from history to frame it as a bridge of civilizational exchange. So ASEAN reflects Mandela principle of non-intervention, flexibility, and regional harmony over legalistic enforcement. So, what is also interesting with regard to the soft power diplomacy, now I think it is famous what we call as heritage diplomacy. The heritage diplomacy has been, I think, successfully used by the China by using this Silk Road diplomacy, yeah. By promoting Silk Road diplomacy, so for example, the BRI concept utilize this glory of the past, the Silk Roads, the trade route in the past. They use it as a way to influence, to make an imagination about the glory of trade in the past. And I think the BRI concept was designed by following the Silk Roads in the past. Now it's also interesting that many countries start to use this heritage diplomacy concept. I think Kalinga and Southeast Asia, we have talked a lot about the connection between these two regions. And it is important as well to, probably, I'm not sure whether it has been started or not, to register this route, the India, Kalinga Southeast Asia cultural route as UNESCO World Heritage, as has been conducted by Chinese with the Silk Road. So one, it is registered a World Cultural Heritage, then a lot of things can be utilized using this concept to reimagine our relation in the past, and to, because there has been a lot of talk and discussion about how actually the influence of Indian culture in many countries in South Asia, in Bali, in Thailand, in Indochina. So having this registered in UNESCO also, so it is will be well known, and it can be a soft power used to build relationships between Southeast Asia and India. Yeah, I think I don't need to present the whole part of my paper, but I try to bring this soft power concept with regard to Kalinga and Southeast Asia relationship. So we can talk about the so-called heritage diplomacy once this Kalinga and Southeast Asia, for example, has been promoted. There are certain processes that has been conducted before it can be recognized by the UNESCO as a World Heritage. I think that's all. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, Dr. Abubakar Ebihara. Now we have Dr. Binod Kumar Mishra, the senior advocate at the Odisha High Court at Cuttack. He has had 2.5 decades of experience in political analysis, research in economic development and policy contribution to the Indian foreign policy. He is currently practicing in the High Court of Odisha, and he is a leading media commentator on issues concerning international relations. We have many times been on panels together on TV. He is an alumnus of the prestigious School of International Studies of the Jawaharlal Nehru University. Dr. Mishra has an MA in Political Science from Utkal University, and both MPhil and PhD International Relations in Theory and Practice of Conflict and Peace in International Relations from JNU. As a director of the Center for Studies in International Relations and Development, Kolkata, he is known for his pioneering initiatives in areas of BIMSTEC and the Kolkata to Kunming, the K2K forums, and India's Look East policy. He has also been a frequent visitor to Asian countries like Vietnam, Myanmar, Laos, Cambodia, Indonesia, Afghanistan, and China, and he has delivered talks to promote India's bilateral diplomatic and economic ties in this neighborhood and beyond. I invite Dr. Mishra to please give his deliberations.
Jai Jagannath and Namaskar. Honorable Chairperson, Sir, Excellency Lalit Mohan Singh Ji, feeling very proud, Sir, by sitting with you, as we have grown up by listening your name and fame during our college days. Other dignitaries on the dais, Principal Secretary, Sir, and other fellows. I am from Patliputra, and Kalinga is famous, Patliputra is also, a country boasts on Patliputra also. So, through the ages, the seas have been serving as bridges for commercial and cultural exchanges. The richness of culture or flourishing of trade and commerce have been possible due to thriving sea routes as these provide pathway to the prosperity of the nations. This is why few years ago, during G20 summit held in India, the member nations reached a consensus for development of an India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor in the seas. Further, in this regard, the first Indian Maritime Heritage Conclave, organized in December 2024, was a landmark event. This prestigious gathering celebrated India's illustrious maritime legacy and its profound contribution to global trade, culture, and innovation. The conclave had served as a vibrant platform for dialogue and collaboration, reaffirming India's enduring maritime heritage and its pivotal role in shaping the global maritime narrative. India's maritime heritage is deeply rooted in the ancient traditions and rich history, with reference to maritime activities found as early as in the Rig Veda. Indian mythology abounds with tales of the ocean, rivers, and the bounty they bestow upon humanity, symbolizing the profound connection between mankind and the seas. Maritime issues were very much an integral part of thoughts in ancient India. Her maritime links and legacy are as old as Indian civilization itself. The Rig Veda mentions sea voyages and as a prayer seeking blessing for safe passage across the seas. O Lord, take us in a ship across the ocean for our well-being. Indian Navy's motto, Shanno Varuna, meaning O Lord Varun, be tranquil, is also from the Rig Veda. Manu Smriti, the ancient legal text, has provided for maritime trade rules. Kautilya Arthashastra tells us about chief controller of ports. It also states that pirate ships and enemy boats violating territorial limits should be destroyed. Mauryan Empire had a board of shipping to look after shipping related activities. Evidence from Indian literature, art, sculpture, painting, and archaeology underscores the existence of a vibrant maritime tradition that shaped the nation's identity. We have our maritime history spanning over 4,500 years. Once an epicenter of power and valor, trade and religious dissemination, the Kalinga Empire was at the peak of maritime activities, and that is why was in a position of economic dominance in the world. Simultaneously, it was a model of artistic and cultural excellence. As the ports have been powerhouses of economy, so naturally Kalinga played a leading role in Indian overseas activities, which contributed a lot to its economy through foreign trade voyages. It would be notable that export items from the ancient Odisha coast included local elephants, which were much prized by the merchants. Diamond was a valuable commodity to be traded. When the Chola ruler between 985 and 1014 captured about 12,000 islands of Kalinga, the Odisha maritime received a shock, but after the death of mighty Rajendra Chol, the Chola became weak and Kalinga regained its position. The Kalinga's geographical position with several rivers, sea coasts, and shelter ports provided a better field for activities to the sailors. We have evidences of departure of large vessels for voyages to do trade with the countries of Southeast and Far East, which also carried monks and priests to preach the tenets of Brahmanism and Buddhism. The Arab invasion in the Indian Ocean badly affected maritime trade in the country, and then rulers of Ganga dynasty proved unable to protect the oceanic trade interests. When different regions were ruled by different chieftains, maritime trade and shipping was being controlled by the state, and the Kalinga rulers encouraged much the people indulged in the growth of shipping, shipbuilding, and other maritime activities to boost foreign trade. Abundance of export materials, adventures, spirit, the traders has, as well as the existence of suitable ports were causes of Kalinga's robust maritime activities. Kalinga's illustrious seafaring legacy underscores India's pivotal role in fostering cultural and economic changes throughout history and its forward-looking vision for sustainable maritime innovation. The discussions like this highlight India's advancement in shipbuilding, navigation, and maritime trade, as well as its aspiration of a maritime powerhouse on the global stage. Modern India's maritime prowess manifests across all domains with its impressive 7,500 kilometer coastline, 13 major ports, and 200 non-major ports, establishing it as an undisputed maritime powerhouse. Indian ports have remarkable annual handling capacity of 12,000 million tons of cargo, underscores the maritime sector's pivotal role in our economic landscape. The maritime sector facilitates an extraordinary 95% of India's trade volume, and that accounts for 70% of its value, capitalizing on our strategic Indian Ocean position. These facts highlight India's advancement in shipbuilding, navigation, and maritime trade, and explore India's contribution to maritime technology. After independence, India has paid much more attention to the land and less in ocean. We have been somehow ignoring the fact that the ships carrying our business in the ocean are carrying our hopes and aspirations of global trade. Somehow we have not been interconnecting our naval strength with the geopolitical and strategy. Kalinga's maritime heritage is more than just a story of the past, rather a living legacy. Government's attention and focus in the last 10 years, consistent effort made to develop port is focusing on sustainability as well as a new look on the blue economy. India's historical maritime prowess is better evident through Indian Navy. During the 11th century AD, empires like the Cholas and Rashtrakutas dominated the sea, from the Arabian Sea to the to the Bay of Bengal. Their powerful fleets playing a crucial role in trade and territorial expansion. Following suit, the Maratha Empire, which flourished in the 7th and 18th centuries, developed a formidable navy under the leadership of Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj. Maratha warship, known for their maneuver ability and innovative tactics, challenged the dominance of European powers like the Portuguese and established control over key coastal regions. Today, the Indian Navy aims to reclaim its position as a formidable naval power backed by formidable arsenals. India's focus on indigenization and technological innovation has propelled the Indian Navy into a league of its own. Indigenous development of aircraft carriers, stealth frigates, and submarines, launched ballistic missiles, showcases India's maritime capability and determination to defend its interests. The Warship Design Bureau has carried legacy of shipbuilding in post-independence era and enlightening our youngs. The Indian Navy has recently bolstered its fleet with several key additions including INS Vikrant, enhancing the Navy power projection capabilities, INS Agre, INS Akshay, enhancing India's anti-submarine warfare capabilities, INS Visakhapatnam. The latest warship in this Indian Navy successfully tested fire, a naval variant of the supersonic cruise missile in 2022, adding firepower with BrahMos to the fleet, and LSAM-15, playing crucial role in the amphibious operations. India's maritime prowess has further underscored by the recent success of Operation Sankalp, by which the Indian Navy responded to numerous incidents in the ocean and ensured the safe passage of Indian flagged vessels and safeguard India's maritime interests in the Gulf region. Recent successes have approved the Indian Navy's vital role as a sea guardian in the Indian Ocean region, ensuring vital trade routes remain free from Somali pirates' threats and increasingly sophisticated attacks like those by the Houthis. As of September 2024 reports, the Indian Navy has 66 ships on order, out of which 50 are under construction on different stages, including destroyers, frigates, corvettes, nuclear-powered submarines, and various other types, and has transformed itself from buyer to builder. As the India's coastal region, including Odisha, were major hubs for shipbuilding in ancient times, we have maintained our shipbuilding legacy also. India's shipbuilding industry, valued at $1.12 billion in 2024, is contributing to the construction of naval ships, submarines, and commercial vessels, aiming to become a major global player. India's shipbuilding industry is experiencing exponential growth and is projected to reach $8,120 million by 2033 and over $237 billion, means rupees 20 trillion by 2047. Green shipping initiatives to make India a global shipping hub is on the way. Maritime India Vision 2030 has set a bold target to elevate India's global ranking in shipbuilding and ship repair from over 20th place to the top 10. And an ambitious goal has been set for top 5 position, as outlined in the Amrit Kal Vision 2047. This strategic push is crucial in realizing India's vision of becoming a 30 trillion economy by 2047. Maritime heritage resources, when properly studied and interpreted, add an important dimension to our understanding and appreciation of our nation's rich legacy. On the other hand, amid intensifying geopolitical rivalries, especially in the Indo-Pacific, from ancient maritime traditions to modern technological advancements, the nation has charted a path that bridges its rich history with its aspirations for the future. Unmanned surface vessels, as well as artificial intelligence-driven ships for coastal surveillance, are poised to redefine naval operations. We can now boast of having the capabilities of designing and building any type of warship. India is poised to become a maritime leader, driving economy and cultural resurgence too. 4 locations have been identified to build ships and rather hubs, including Kendrapada in Odisha, which will be developed here in 2,000 to 3,000 acres of land. In the next 5 years, about 112 ships will be needed to carry petroleum products, gas, and other products. Till now, 75% of India's transshipment activities were conducted at foreign ports, resulting in huge revenue loss to the country, while once India used to have a major share in the global GDP and Kalinga had a major contribution in it. In this process, the sailors are a very important part and parcel of maritime activities. Here, there in the country, they numbered about 3.25 lakh, out of which about 57,000 are in Odisha. India currently ranks among the top 3 countries with the highest number of seafarers worldwide. Hard work and visionary planning has contributed to India's remarkable success. In the last 10 years, we have doubled the capacity of our port and expanded our waterways 8-fold. Today, 2 of our ports rank among the top 30 ports in the world. India now proudly ranks among the top 20 countries in the global shipbuilding. Under the ambitious Sagarmala project, we are poised to become a maritime leader like Kalinga. The intricate craftsmanship behind the construction of diverse ancient boat types such as Bhel, Chhap, Padhua, Pota and Nauka represent not only Odisha's maritime glory, rather shed light on the socio-economic conditions and cultural dimensions that influenced this thriving tradition. Through a meticulous exploration of historical records and contemporary accounts, this paper presents a comprehensive glimpse into the heritage that has not only stood the test of time, but continues to shape Odisha's cultural identity even today. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Dr. Mishra. I would like to now call Dr. Priyadashi Das, who is the Associate Professor at the Research and Information System for Developing Countries at New Delhi, which is an autonomous body, policy research institution under the Ministry of External Affairs. Dr. Das has 17 years of experience in policy research on macroeconomic policy, infrastructure financing and fintech issues in the context of G20, BRICS, in the Indian Ocean Rim Association, BIMSTEC and the Indo-Pacific. He has co-authored 2 books, Asia-Africa Growth Corridor and the Universal Banking in India, and a number of research papers and peer-reviewed journals edited. He is a member of the editorial advisory board of the Cambridge Scholar Publishing, London, and editorial boards of international organization, research journals and advances in economics and business. He is the co-lead in T20, the think tank, task force on financing for sustainable development in the South Asian presidency of G20. Earlier, he was the co-chair of the T20 task force on reforming the international financial architecture of the Indian and Brazilian presidencies of G20. Dr. Das holds a master's degree in economics from Ravenshaw College, Cuttack, his MPhil in planning and development and PhD in economics from the IIT Mumbai. Dr. Das, please.
Thank you, sir. And thank you all distinguished delegates for sitting the whole day listening to the various facets of Kalinga and the past. So I am basically a student of economics and policy, so I won't be able to provide a rich historical perspective on the matter. You have got enough from the colleagues in the past sessions. So what I'll try to do is to give you some nuances of the geopolitical situation that is evolving. And as Ambassador Mansingh mentioned in the morning and just before the session began, what are the directions India is heading in terms of its economy, its diplomatic priorities, and how do you place Odisha there so that we can build on the rich historical foundation and see Odisha having several such milestones that we had in the past, so we register our name in the modern history and probably in the future. So, if you could, all of you are aware of what is happening around. So before we get down to the state of Odisha, where do we situate our country in the larger geopolitical complex cobweb of relations? Because the session is on the dynamics of geopolitics. So what India has given thrust in the recent years, if you see that perhaps there is a thinking that BIMSTEC is getting more attention because there is a stalemate in the SARC process, which partly true, partly not true, because both the institutions existed even though there was SARC functioning well in good times. BIMSTEC has its unique characteristics of linking South Asia with Southeast Asia, because two members are not from South Asia. Myanmar or Thailand are from Southeast Asia. So BIMSTEC and SARC should coexist, but unfortunately, because of the SARC process getting politicized, or nothing is happening despite of a very vibrant secretariat in Kathmandu, so BIMSTEC has got the attention, which is a genuine focus. And India-ASEAN relations has been evolving very rapidly over the past 2 decades. Look East, then Arct East, Indo-Pacific, and I know, because we are a institution with the Ministry of External Affairs, we know what is happening in India's foreign policy. Several of the diplomatic efforts that have been made in recent years are focused on ASEAN. Because ASEAN to some extent is believed as a functioning regional economic organization. They are more focused on economic integration, a lot of documentation on their regional integration process, a lot of models to emulate in other countries. So India-ASEAN relation bilaterally and India-ASEAN together has evolved very nicely. So it is a strong focus of India there. Indo-Pacific, as Sir mentioned in the beginning, is a relatively vague concept because it doesn't have a geographical boundary. But you understand what Indo-Pacific means. But what I interpret here is that it is little beyond than the Indian Ocean Rim Association. Indian Ocean Rim Association is a 21-member country along the Indian Ocean, including the West African countries like Kenya, Tanzania, Madagascar, Mozambique, and all those. But here it goes beyond the Indian Ocean and covers Germany, US, and others, because they have their white papers on that. So it is a little bit of extension. That's what Indian Ocean Rim Association has done a lot of work, especially on the maritime domain, blue economy, shipping. We have done extensive work at RIS on that. I have the privilege of being part of that in 2012 to 15, around those years. Indo-Pacific Ocean Initiative is a part of the Indo-Pacific, but it's an Indian law-initiated initiative, which has also a very strong, greater and comprehensive engagement with the Global South. You might have heard that there are 3 summits of the Global South, Voice of the Global South, during India's G20 presidency in 2023. So India is steering that process, probably sending a message that will represent the Global South issues in the multilateral institutions. And that's why China is getting quite antagonized, because India is rising to that extent. And we are working with the G20, G7 partner countries, and relatively greater focus in other parts of the world. So I'll move faster from here. BIMSTEC priority areas, not spending much time here. You all know that earlier there were 14 priority areas. Now it has been streamlined to 7. Each country is a lead country. For India, it is basically security angle, counter-terrorism, but that does not stop us to advocate on other areas. So I keep switching here. If you go to the trade, investment, and development front, here it is just that what are the mechanisms that exist within the BIMSTEC to steer the cooperation process. There is a trade and economic ministerial meeting, senior officials track, trade and negotiation committee, but the FTA negotiations has been going on for past 20 years, still not concluded because there are issues of mutual recognition, the local content, value addition and all those issues. So, but hopefully we'll see a new light in the coming years. BIMSTEC Free Trade Area, this is just a snapshot of what is happening there. It's a trade in services, trade in goods, dispute settlement, trade facilitation, so all possible areas that you see in a typical trade agreement. Now, what I'll do, Indo-Pacific, as it is a quite big area, so I have just taken BIMSTEC countries and present some economic fundamentals that how are these countries placed now. So if you see their economic growth in real terms, we adjust the prices. So it has by and large tells that all the countries have grown over time. There was a bit slowdown in during COVID, but strong recoveries are observed, and because of the geopolitical disturbances in Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, there is some contraction in the output, but they have registered significant progress. Per capita income varies from, because these are large and small countries, so you can imagine that it cannot converge to that, to a same level. So what has happened to the composition of GDP? That what are the sectors that have contributed to the economy in these countries? Over the years, besides manufacturing and industry, services sector is the largest contributor to GDP, which is a good thing, because achieving comparative advantages in many of the manufacturing sector is not a small job. You need to invest in R&D, you prepare your workforce, but services sector is highly education-centric, and I think Odisha should leverage that. And 50% of our GDP, by and large, for all, except Myanmar, is coming from services sector. Services sector includes telecom, finance, hospitality, tourism, and all other sectors. And besides India, all other countries are also attracting a lot of FDI from other countries based on their growth story in the last decade. So I keep switching it faster. Inflation is, you know that there was because of global supply chain disruption post-COVID and Red Sea crisis in the last 2 years, there was prices were upward, including essential goods and other commodities, but it is getting moderated to a fairly manageable level in all parts of the world. It is worth noting what has happened to the saving and investment front, because when we talk about the growth, when we talk about diversifying our economies, we need investment. So how much investment is happening in those countries? If you see by and large, in economics terminology, we use the word fixed capital formation. So if you see the numbers, it is, again, India being the largest country, the bars are taller, but not to undermine the progress in other partner BIMSTEC countries. Gross domestic savings, the situation, that's called a saving rate. So it by and large varies, but still in favor of these countries. Now coming to the Indo-Pacific idea. Now, what does Indo-Pacific offer to us? Indo-Pacific, besides getting into the points by here, the critical pillars, what it could help is to see diversify the trade basket of India. And that's why the Odisha's stake in that diversification of the export basket of India could be there. We are already exporting fish, minerals and other commodities. So we can think of adding value so that Odisha's presence in the India's export diversification is felt. And if you read the economic survey of government of Odisha in 2024-25, they have very rightly emphasized that Odisha is the gateway to the Southeast Asia. And that's the focus should be. And here if you see, across disciplines, this is not just confined to economics, we have been focusing on several parameters of our policy. Resilience, inclusivity, sustainability. So cutting across the regional organization, cutting across the spectrums of the policy, these are the areas we need to focus on. Supply chain all of a sudden become a global issue because there was a lot of disruptions, how to diversify the supply chain so that we are not just thinking about the Suez Canal, we have alternative routes. Now India has proposed India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor, which is very much, it took 2 minutes. So this is the last slide, sir, but I'll spend some time here. So what has happened in terms of the geopolitics and how does it matter to the subject matter that we are discussing today? Where lies the potential for building the modern Odisha based on the strong historical foundations of Kalinga? We were very strong in maritime trade in the past, what we heard in the morning, but what has evolved over time because of the aggressive policy by China, by other state powers who have gone much beyond than the navigational skills than we have and are very, they have strong financial positions. Unlike Belt and Road initiatives, we, India, cannot take claim of any connectivity corridor, be it trilateral highway, be it India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor. So we don't have the financial muscle to compete with the powers, Asian powers and others. So that's why we need to see that what can be done so that Odisha has a larger stake in the India's prosperity. Export promotion has been given thrust. The latest budget of Union budget, if you see, there has been a lot of discussion about focused product and focused region. So focused product means if it is bamboo, if it is turmeric, if it is spices, you need to focus on that and go for a marketing value addition so that you see over the years there is visible change in the level of exports happening from the state. Rather than talking about a very holistic approach where you get lost whether you see the gain happening or not. Again referring to the economic survey and linking to our work at RIS, we have been talking about growth corridors. Growth corridors means a combination of a spatially defined economic zone where it could be a region within a country or several countries connected to that. So for example, as I said, India, Middle East economic corridor, trilateral highway. So within Odisha, the government of Odisha has identified 6 corridors. And they are saying that these are the growth clusters. So why don't convert that growth clusters into growth corridors? Think about linking to the BIMSTEC growth centers, think of linking to the ASEAN growth centers, and think big. What are the products that can go from Odisha to those corridors? What you need, whether you need to improve maritime connectivity, whether you need to make the, as I mentioned in the beginning, make the Kalinga brand. We are talking about soft power. What could be soft power? Can Odisha be a soft power? Have we leveraged on Odisha as a soft power? Or when we talk about yoga, yoga becomes a soft power for India, or Ayurveda for that matter. How to harness the diaspora of Odisha in other parts of the country and in other countries of the Southeastern Asia. Because Odisha has a very strong diaspora. If you see in Delhi, I think all policy circles, sir himself would tell that we have all senior officials from Odisha. At some point of time, our Minister of External Affairs have all different secretaries from Odisha only. Harnessing blue economy, because we have our very strong, long coastline, we have a rich maritime history, so harnessing blue economy is a very good opportunity. We have a report on that from RIS where we have done the new changes that are happening, digital economy, services sectors, financial services sector. If you do not leverage on those sectors, you will miss the bus. So before any other state, Gujarat, Maharashtra and all, they have invested heavily into infrastructure and other things. So state of Odisha need to invest in the modern infrastructure and address the connectivity gaps wherever it is, so that we could see a very synergistic linkage between Odisha and other parts of the country, and which will push the frontier of Odisha, growth frontier of Odisha, and we probably could reach out to other countries in the ASEAN and Southeast Asian region. So in sum, what I wanted to present to you that the modern Odisha has to be very active in terms of real-time monitoring of its policy, align its policies with the government of India's approach towards other countries, because otherwise the political differences may exist, but then you cannot really get benefit from what is happening in the regional scheme of things within Asia from the geopolitical point of view. So with this note, I stop here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Das. Thank you for the real loaded talk with all the facts and figures. We'll have time for just a couple of questions. If there are some direct questions, I'm sure any of the panelists or Excellency Ambassador will take it up. Any questions, please? I would now request Excellency Ambassador Lalit Mansingh to please sum up the... There was a question, please, I asked you.
Tarima Kasi, thank you to all of you. I am Ananta Kumar Giri from Chennai. So, Dr. Hara, you mentioned about the Kalinga East Asia relation as an example of non-Western model of international relations. Very interesting. But what kind of historical, data we have about that? Because it is one thing to propose an alternative model, but to go into the substantive processes of historical dynamics, because when it comes to power, use of power, the great historian Arnold Toynbee says, the dialectic between power and suffering. So my request is, if you can elaborate, this Kalinga and Southeast Asia model of, a non-domineering international relations with substantive kind of historical fact about it.
Thank you, Prof. Ananta, for the questions. I think the word before the colonialism came is the word where there is no clear border like we have today in international relations. The so-called Westphalian system is based on sovereignty principle, as we know, very clear state border. But before that, in the relation between Kalinga and Southeast Asia, there's no such kind of border. So I mentioned the actor is not state actor, but civilizational actors. And diplomacy conducted also civilizational diplomacy. So they bring out the region's political system as well. They through trades, through the monks, for example, this kind of exchange like that, the trades. You were right that I have not mentioned any proof how, in which area, how many monks has visited Southeast Asia, or what kind of trade relationship has been conducted during that time. So I don't have that data. But in general, we can conclude that what they did in the past is a bit similar to the soft diplomacy. So they are not. I think there is no case that Kalinga and Southeast Asia has a war. So what they have conducted is kind of exchanging values. The Southeast Asia tried to adapt. As we know that the writing, the Sanskrit letters are still being used in Bali, for example, in several part of Java as well. So things like this has not been elaborated much. But in general, we know that there has been a connection in the past, and there's been a kind of support diplomacy has been conducted in the past. Thank you.
three very eminent specialists have given you different aspects of what we are discussing from different angles. And I'm grateful to them because they have added a lot of ideas and added to our understanding of what we are trying to discuss today. I want to thank Dr. Abu Bakr for setting the tone of this discussion, because coming from Southeast Asia, he is valuable as a voice from the region. It is not coming from Kalinga saying we were great. It is coming from somebody from Southeast Asia giving his assessment of Kalinga. What I particularly appreciated was he described Kalinga as a civilizational actor. He said that there was no narrative of dominance on the part of Kalinga in Southeast Asia. He spoke about the fusion of cultures which was brought about by Kalinga, of merging the values and practices of India with the existing values and practices of the local societies. And then he talked about the speciality of ASEAN, what is their contribution to diplomacy. And he spoke about the ASEAN way, a distinct form of diplomacy. And those who have been exposed to the diplomacy of Southeast Asia will understand they have a very gentle but a very persuasive diplomacy. And this is exactly what Kalinga was. Not imposing your views, not threatening, not conquering, but persuading. And this is where Southeast Asia is great. And one has great admiration for the diplomats of Southeast Asia because they are so cool. They don't, discuss business when you meet them. They say, come and have a game of golf and we can discuss. This is the style. Non-aggressive, but extremely productive and extremely successful because they are the ones who started the tiger economies in Southeast Asia. So I think he has given us a very good review of Kalinga from the Southeast Asia point of view, and I think we can build on that. Now, Dr. Binoy Mishra gave a different perspective. He talked about the recent maritime exchanges of India, and he described Kalinga as the epicenter of power and an economic powerhouse. Let us remember, this is how we now understand Kalinga to be, an epicenter of power and economic powerhouse. And why is this important? Because this is exactly what Odisha wants to be in the 21st century. So it is a valuable lesson on what we can learn from the Kalingas, from our ancestors, about their successors and how they did it. And then he talks about how Odisha is progressing with his plans for mineral extraction and exports and so on, and the implications of Odisha of the growth in maritime activities of India in general. So, in a way, he is giving us an outline of what Odisha should do, more of what Odisha should do in order to find a place on the map of the Indo-Pacific. And then Dr. Priyadarshini Das, from a very specialized economic viewpoint, talked about areas of cooperation like BIMSTEC. Now, here, and then he proceeded to talk about our diplomacy and what we need to do in the face of the current formations of the world. That's the geopolitical scene. There is BIMSTEC, there is ASEAN, there is G20, there is G7, there is the Quad. These are various points of reference of the current geopolitical situation and how we need to navigate these situations in order to find benefit for ourselves. But I have a comment on that. Now, all that is fine. This is the structure that has been there until recently. And when I talked about the turmoil in geopolitics today, and the uncertainty about the scene. Everything that he has mentioned has a question mark attached to it. Yeah, ASEAN didn't, the SARC didn't work very well because one particular country was trying to obstruct progress in SARC. So we went to BIMSTEC. Now BIMSTEC is a question mark because BIMSTEC starts with B for Bangladesh, and we don't know what is going to happen in Bangladesh and what the future holds for our cooperation with Bangladesh. Again, a question mark. G7 and G20. India did a fantastic job as the leader of the G20, and everybody applauded India's role as a leader of the global south. Now the question mark is, with President Trump in office, we don't know what is the future of G20. Is he going to come for the G20 conference? We don't know. Is he going to support the G20? We don't know. You talk of G7. G7 is the organization that President Trump has completely destroyed in the first few weeks of his presidency. His biggest hostile action is against the allies of the United States. The European Union, they were like, brothers in arms. And now he's threatening them with action, with tariffs and so on. So with all these question marks, what is the path that is lying ahead for us? That's the question. But I want to thank Dr. Priyadat Das. In his last slide, he gave us an outline of what Odisha should do. And this is what I gathered from his presentation. Odisha should do more and focus on exports. Odisha should no longer be involved with just producing minerals, which is just extracting the minerals and selling the mineral ore. That is of the least value to be added to Odisha. You go from mineral extraction to mineral products. From mineral products, you go to exports of mineral products. Odisha has started. Paradip is now a center for export of petrochemical products. It's an international port, and fortunately, it is right there on the Indo-Pacific. So more such action needs to be done. He talks of a growth corridor, an excellent idea, a fantastic idea which other states have done with great benefit, and Odisha should do the same. He talks of the blue economy. Nobody has explored the blue economy, but it's an idea whose time has come. Because the blue economy gives you sustenance, it allows you to have trade relations with countries, and there are minerals underneath the ocean which we can acquire to our benefit within the limits of the ocean that is available to under our sovereignty. He talked about service sectors, another very important one. Have you noticed that Bhubaneswar has become a center of medical facilities for the entire eastern region of India? You go to any hospital in Odisha, you see patients coming from not just West Bengal or Bihar. They are coming from Afghanistan, from Sudan, from the Middle East. I am amazed when I go to a hospital to see how many foreign nationalities are coming to Odisha for medical treatments. Now services. We have set up an AIMS here. We have set up IIM here. We have set up NICER here. We are going to be a hub of service exports from this part of the world. And better communications. The roads infrastructure is excellent. Odisha's location is good. I think these are excellent ideas. Now, I don't have much to add to this except to bring you back to the theme that we started with. What about Kalinga's soft power, and how can Odisha emulate the success of Kalinga? And as I mentioned in my talk this morning, regard Kalinga not as a history of Odisha and Southeast Asia, regard Kalinga as a brand, because eventually it is the brand which sells. There is a brand India which sells. The brand India is the brand of a vibrant economy which is built on a democratic foundation. Find another country which grows so fast and yet preserves its democracy and its democratic institutions. So, brand Odisha has to become brand Kalinga. It's no good to say Odisha, as our tourism department in Odisha says, is India's best kept secret. Don't keep it as a secret anymore. This is a brand and you have to promote it. People should know what Kalinga represents, and people should hear what people like Dr. Abu Bakr says about what Kalinga means for the people of Southeast Asia. And therefore, I am an optimist. I know that because of 500 years of decline, there is a kind of diffidence which is built into the psyche of Odias, that things are difficult, other people are smarter, and so on. This is what we have to get rid of. And the way to do it is to remember what your ancestors did 1500 years ago and how they established this network of connectivity and a network of prosperity with Southeast Asia. But I have another suggestion to make, and I hope that those of you who are connected with the authorities in Odisha will convey this. We have begun to remember the heroes of Odisha's past. I am glad that a lot of discussion has taken place on what was known as the movement that came up against the British rule in 1817, well before 1857, which we regard as the first war of independence. Actually, the first war of independence started against the British here in Odisha, in what was called then the Paiko Vidroha, the rebellion of the Paikos of Odisha. Now, the Paikos have been honored because they have been the traditional militia of Kalinga, and they represent the military power of Kalinga within the confines of India, not outside India. But the Sadhavas were before them, and we don't know who are the Sadhavas, and we have not yet honored them. Now, some historians, I find, have identified who these Sadhavas were, because for me that was a big question mark. Who are these people? Who are these adventurous people who sailed across the seas, explored Southeast Asia, and had this wonderful trade with that region? Today we know that the Sadhavas, their descendants are there in Odisha, and I thank Professor Patit Pavan Mishra if he's here. Now, Patit Babu in his latest book has identified the Sadhavas as the Kumtis who live in southern Odisha and in northern Andhra Pradesh. They are very humble people. They do sort of retail trading, and it is wonderful to know that their ancestors were the ones, were the Sadhavas who brought glory for Kalinga. And I think the time has come. Yes, Mr. Das, and I'm glad you are here. And since you represent the government of Odisha, the time has come to honor another of the great heroes of Odisha, the humble Sadhava, who has brought us so much of credit and so much of power to brand Kalinga. So, the bottom line is, Odisha is on the move. Odisha has registered, as I mentioned this morning, close to 8 to 9% growth, one of the highest among the states. It is still poor, but it's getting rid of poverty. It has got almost 50% of the minerals of India. It is rich underground. It is rich overground. And beyond the land, there is a sea which is available to Odisha. So I see a glorious future for Odisha, except that Odias have to look at Kalinga and get inspiration for success. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. A very well encapsulated talk you gave about what our three esteemed speakers had spoken earlier. Yes, the idea of Odisha is here. Odisha is on the march. We have arrived. We are going ahead. And we'll reach. I think after what His Excellency has said, there's not much what I can add. But yes, I'll thank everybody, all the three panelists, and specifically sir, for a very invigorating and very informative talk. It was, we saw the PPTs, they were really very nicely done. And we look forward to many more such interesting sessions tomorrow. Thank you once again, everybody, all who attended, and all our panelists. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, and I thank all the panelists who all are here for inspiring words. We are obliged and privileged to hear from you, sir. I would request everyone to please join your hands for the last session that we had. And with this, now it is the time that we felicitate our esteemed guest on the stage. I would request our Special Secretary, sir, to please join us on the stage. A huge round of applause for Mr. Devaprasad Das, sir, Special Secretary to Odia Language, Literature and Culture Department. Along with him, we have Professor Upendra Padhi. Upendra Padhi, sir, to felicitate our esteemed guest on the stage. And with this, ladies and gentlemen, I would request all of you to please be patient with us, because we have two beautiful dance forms to be shown on this stage, dance performances. We have Odissi and Sambalpuri. That is also a part of our Odia Asmita. Ladies and gentlemen, I would request, and we would really like your kind patient to be here with us for the next cultural session. Now is the time that we felicitate the first IFS of Odisha. Ladies and gentlemen, kindly put your hands together for Lalit Man Singh ji, former Foreign Secretary, Government of India. It's a beautiful moment on the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, kindly put your hands together for Dr. E.B. Hara, who has been kind enough to grace the stage with his wonderful presence. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together. Thank you so very much, sir. Now it's the time that we felicitate Dr. Binay Kumar Mishra, HOD, Ancient Indian and Asian Studies Department of PSNC College, Patna. He has been kind enough to grace the stage with his fantastic presence. Ladies and gentlemen, now it's the time that we felicitate Dr. Priyadarshi Das, Associate Professor, RIS, New Delhi, who is joining us for this very interactive session. Now, the moderator of the session, Mr. Anil Dheer, who has been kind enough to moderate this session. Ladies and gentlemen, here we are at the end of the first day of the seminar. We would request all of you all to please be seated, please be glued to your seat, as we are going to get the cultural session after this. Thank you so very much. We would take 2 minutes to set up the stage for the cultural programs. Ladies and gentlemen, be with us. We have Odissi and Sambalpuri dance for you. Ladies and gentlemen, it is the moment that we are going to take you through the journey, a glimpse of Odisha's Ashmita, of course, because Odissi and Sambalpuri are the identity of Odisha. Nevertheless, ladies and gentlemen, I would request everyone, you have been so patient with us throughout the day. We would request a little more of your patience so that we can showcase the true Odia culture to all of you all fine ladies and gentlemen. Care for a tea or coffee, and we would expect everyone to be back in the hall for the culture program. Thank you.